Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube. And the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Kamran Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast grim dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Man, it's like old times here. This is a Thursday night Table Talk. So this is fantastic, kind of like getting back into the swing of things. So it is fantastic to have you tonight. Welcome back. Welcome to my home. Welcome to the office, and welcome to Table Talk. We decided to do this because we were not done talking about the upcoming retirement of Kathleen Kennedy at the end of the year from Lucasfilm. We were talking about this on Tuesday. Doug Burton, who is going to be joining us tonight, he did a fantastic job pulling together all kinds of, basically a timeline of Kennedy's time at Lucasfilm. Last time, we're kind of jumping into it. We're going to do a brief recap, really brief recap, but we're jumping back into it here. Last Tuesday, we got to the retirement of, to the dismissal of Gina Carano. That's where we got. And then we decided to pull it right there. That was a 3-hour and 40-minute discussion to get to that point. We're coming back in now. We'll do a brief recap, but we're continuing this. And welcome to the show, Douglas A. Burton.
Hey, thanks for having me, Heath.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on. You have done a lot of work on the subject as far as the Kathleen Kennedy retrospective.
Yeah,
with the retrospective, how we want to couch it.
Yeah, post-mortem retrospective. When the news broke, I know there's some debate out there that this may not be true, but I don't believe it. I believe that once it hits the trades, it's almost impossible to reverse that ship, and that this is the real thing. I believe that. And, once that struck, I realized that we now have a bookend. And the Kathleen Kennedy era was from 2012 to 2025. And we can say that now. And as such, now we know what happened. We know the story. And I thought it was a good idea to take a retrospective, a look back, a post-mortem, an autopsy of this disaster, really.
It has been, yes.
Of the franchise.
Yeah, and I don't want to. Cameron's not going to be able to be here tonight. I did invite him, but he's not going to be able to be here tonight. But he actually just posted, like at 7:00 as we were going live, a article on his Patreon, which I'm not going to share his Patreon posts because that's on his Patreon, except for the fact, the opening statement here that is said on this that he just posted, which directly addresses what you just talked about, Doug. He posted a Patreon post that says why Kathleen Kennedy cannot defeat the trades. And he says many people in the fandom and on this Patreon are treating the trade announcements that Kathleen Kennedy is retiring as some kind of small event. We've seen this before, they say. We have not, Cameron says. The top trades, including Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, have never before, in capital letters, never before, said Kennedy is out, nor have they run articles listing candidates for her successor. This is a watershed event because you can't go against the Hollywood trades or the whole system collapses. There's a lot more that he writes on his Patreon, but that's a directly addressing that situation that you've heard this before? No, she might be going, because yes, that's been talked about on YouTube a lot. Oh, she's out. She's going to be out. We've been hearing that. That's a favorite YouTube clickbait title for the past, I don't know how many years.
Because it's conjecture in the past. It was mostly minor, the ecosystem. You have the legacy media, which in this case is Deadline, the Hollywood Reporter, and Variety. I would say those are the three major legacy media outlets for Hollywood. And then below that, you get all these different tiers of insider, semi-insider, minor media. You've got Collider and Polygon and IGN and it's Ain't It Cool, new, whatever. All these other minor things that are and so sometimes, and then you got YouTubers, anyone, people coming out who have various levels of expertise or connections coming out and discussing this. And what has happened over the last 15 years is that large companies and groups use minor and mid and high systems, different various systems, to leak information out and get rumors started, to counter a rumor with another rumor, all sorts of different things. We've seen how many fake announcements out of Lucasfilm, for example. Announcement like the Taika Waititi movie or the Rian Johnson trilogy or Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron. Lando was going to be a show that was going to come out, and all these things, and they just quietly, they never get made. So there is a system at work. That's what I believe Cameron's referring to, the system at work. And in the past, all the other comments about Kathleen Kennedy's departure came from the lower tiers of this media conglomerate, YouTubers and maybe smaller media outlets saying we've heard. And then, but the trades never touch those things. The trades never touch them because it's all conjecture and then people would speculate. There's a reason why she would leave. It's believable. She just blew up the trilogy in 2019. And, and then Indiana Jones was a flop. And then, all sorts of different things. So suddenly the trades say it. And we didn't actually get any rumors even started in the lower tiers. So this was the trades lead off with Kennedy's imminent departure. So that is different. That's not something, that's the official narrative industry at this point. And so it is, I believe it. I believe that's good as gold at this point. So, and that's what we're here to talk about. That's my reasoning for how I understand what's going on and why this postmortem is going to be great to crawl through this again.
All right. Well, where do you want to start? I mean, like I said, we at the end of last Tuesday had basically ended up with the firing of Gina Carano.
Right.
and we had talked about. So, do you want to talk about? You want to do a quick recap? It needs to be a quick recap, but we can do.
I'll do it in about 1 minute. Actually,
okay. Watch the last show. Watch the last episode to get us up to this point. But then, okay,
right.
So, what was it like? Go for it.
Do you want to pull that up real quick?
Oh, right here.
So
okay. Yes.
What I did is I broke up the story of Disney, Lucasfilm, into 3 parts because there's 3 different. Not just for no reason, but because the nature of what's happening at this company and with this franchise and with these movies that we love and these characters that we love takes 3 different forms. And the first form was part 1. And this is what we essentially discussed in the first. We did a lot of other things in that first discussion, but we also covered part 1.
Previous to her taking control of Lucasfilm,
we covered the setup of the world in 2012 when this exchange took place from Lucasfilm over to Disney. We talked about Kennedy's background, but this time period goes from 2012 to 2019, so it covers 7 years, and it started red hot, and it would end in a miserable belly flop. So we covered the purchase of Disney to Lucasfilm. We covered Force Awakens and the enthusiasm that produced and the revitalization of Star Wars. We talked about Rogue One, which was essentially well received and had some iconic scenes in it.
I mean, I still enjoy that movie. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, I think Rogue One has aged rather well. The music is good, and there's some great scenes in it. And then, of course, the big turn of part 1, the tragedy of a trilogy, The Last Jedi. Last Jedi comes out, and we spent some good time crawling over this movie. What made it wrong? Why did it fail? And how the fandom began to turn on Lucasfilm at this point, and how Lucasfilm used those trades that I was talking about to beleaguer the fans and accuse the fans of being bad fans and bigots. And this started a real contest between the establishment at Lucasfilm and in Hollywood against what they began to label as the toxic fan base. The fan base struck back. No one went to go see the next film Solo. And then some good news happened. In 2019, Jon Favreau joins Lucasfilm. We actually never covered that as an event last time, but Jon Favreau joins Lucasfilm.
Okay.
Huh? No, 2019.
Oh,
19.
2019. Okay.
Right. He joins in 2019, and it was exciting. And because of the backlash with The Last Jedi, there was speculation then that he was going to take over for Kennedy. And obviously that never happened exactly. But he did get to work on a new show, Star Wars' first live-action TV show. And it coincided, and we covered this, the launch of Disney Plus on the back of Mandalorian Season 1, Jon Favreau's contribution. And guess what? Huge hit. Everyone loved The Mandalorian.
So he joined, just so I'm clear on the time. So he joined and then immediately launched The Mandalorian. That was what happened? Okay. All right.
Yeah. He launched The Mandalorian, and it was well received. And this was a merchandising juggernaut. Baby Yoda sold like crazy. Puzzles of Mando. I mean, anywhere I went, I saw Mando merchandise with Baby Grogu.
And at the time, like I was saying, that at the time with the Mandalorian release, season 1 and season 2, it felt like there was something an alternate kind of structure that was building for Star Wars that was alternate to the movies that Kathleen Kennedy seemed to have so much control over. That it seemed like an alternate structure was being built by Favreau and the Mandalorian. That's right. Right.
That's right. So don't change anything yet. I just want to finish recover. So, and this is where you started to see what would become the experience of the next part of the Disney thing. So you had Jon Favreau come in, and he launches Mandalorian with the launch of Disney Plus, and it was successful. This was successful. Disney Plus launched. Mando had real eyeballs all over it, and keep in mind, back then there was very few subscribers on Disney Plus compared to today, and Mando was a runaway hit. So things looked like they were turning around in 2019 with the introduction of Jon Favreau into this discussion, and that pretty much ends part 1. The trilogy is dead. Star Wars was a disaster. That was a bad trilogy. Very toxic and divisive debates amongst the fans.
All 3 sequel films have come out.
All 3 films have come out. In 2019 was the Rise of Skywalker, and it landed with a thud. It staggered out of the theaters and fell promptly on its face. They estimated that it only made about $52 million in profit, which is incredible for a Star Wars, canon episodic film. So that pretty much ends part one. It's official. This is the trilogy is out. And now we're moving. All of Disney and all of Star Wars is going to shift their attention to Disney Plus, a place that suddenly Jon Favreau has staked out.
What was marketed as, like I said, I remember, like supposed to be the end of the greatest story ever told. That's what all of that was.
Right. And so that's part one, the story of the trilogy and Kathleen Kennedy's red hot start and ice cold ending. Over a 7-year period in which Star Wars was revitalized and then almost bastardized in the sense that the fan base was absolutely against it, and it was far worse than I remember from the prequels. Because there's plenty of backlash on the prequels, but not like this. This was different because it was foundationally
No, I think that's a great point. That even I and most of my family, as I said, was very critical of the prequels and I personally remain so to this day. I'm not one of the people who kind of turned around on that. But that didn't result in a hatred of Star Wars.
No.
This might have been like not really what we think should have been there, or what it could have been, but it didn't like turn people away from Star Wars.
Right. People still love Star Wars. In fact, I really got a sense that people didn't hate the prequels. I think they were just so disappointed in the prequels. So I think a lot of the frustration much more out of the fans.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right. We just had something else in our head. And, suddenly there's droid armies and, it wasn't the lived in universe we remember. This was a shiny, magnificent civilization that spanned the culture. The Jedis were not hermits, but a monastic order of the highest positions in society. And so, and then, there was some fantasy elements, and we just didn't know what to make of all of this. And we didn't digest it well. And I think we just had higher hopes.
Yeah, we had higher hopes. We had higher hopes because it wasn't like when we're talking about the character of Luke Skywalker and the sequels. It's not like I think the prequels destroyed Anakin. But I mean, man, that fall story, because we've talked about even the structure of the fall story arc with Brianna and stuff like that. I mean, and used Anakin as kind of a bad example about how this, like, that could have been so much stronger. That all could have been so much better. And everything that you had thought about what the Clone Wars is and all of that. It was a disappointment, but it didn't ruin anything. And there's some things that are inconsistent with the lore and stuff like that, but it did not ruin anything on the level of the sequels.
It didn't ruin anything, and I'll make the argument that it actually it confused the fans. I think Phantom Menace. I think younger kids really were thrilled by it. Older fans were turned off by it, and there was a general confusion about the tone change to Phantom Menace. And I actually like the end of Attack of the Clones. I like the when the clones show up and you start to see the stormtroopers coming in. But Revenge of the Sith was their best one in 2005. So, that trilogy, as flawed as it was, saved its best for last. I think it's universally agreed that the Revenge of the Sith is their best effort in that prequel trilogy. So it ended on a high note, as high as it could get anyway. And then this led in eventually 3 years later, 2008, to the Clone Wars animated series. And this actually helped to recontextualize the prequels because we got a better understanding of what happened during the Clone Wars. And I actually think the Clone Wars is what the prequel trilogy should have been. But that actually built up an audience and kind of handled some pent-up demand for Star Wars by the time Lucasfilm got there. So there was still a lot of demand. And the ticket sales for Force Awakens proves your point, Heath, that anger, frustration, disappointment, yes. Hatred, no. We were ready for more Star Wars. That is not the case with what happened with the sequel trilogy.
Well, yeah, right. Yes. And I think a lot of us, I know a lot of us had wanted the sequel trilogy first. Instead, we got prequels.
Right.
And so we're initially upset about that. but
Well, and then
because I don't think we ever thought we were going to get sequels after that. Oh, we want sequels. Oh no, we got prequels, and then oh no, okay, now it's over. Okay, that's Star Wars.
Yeah, good point. That's a good point. I don't think we ever imagined prequels. You're right. We wanted, in fact, to prove that point you just made. In the 90s, Timothy Zahn wrote the sequel trilogy. Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising. I forgot the last one. What's the last one? Yikes.
I actually can't call the.
Anyway, it's the Timothy Zahn, which introduced Grand Admiral Thrawn. I read it right when it came out. I was ravenous for it, and I loved it. And it was so much. It was a very satisfying sequel trilogy, by the way.
Okay.
So yeah, and then Lucas decided instead to flip backwards and go into the prequel territory. But we were hooked because we were told this is Anakin's fall to Darth Vader, which really we didn't see until the third movie. For some reason, my younger brain thought, Phantom Menace, we'd get a glimpse, and all I saw was this adorable child who's innocent and, seemed to be completely harmless. So I was like, oh, Vader at age 10. Okay.
Yeah, I know. That was
do I
not
need
necessary.
that?
Hey, Douglas, I got some weird stuff going over here. Did I just say Douglas? I just said that Douglas because I
did.
On there and I have some weirdness going on here. I have some weirdness going on over here because we may have.
The Last Command. Thank you, Titterpig.
We have some breaking news over here.
We do?
Yeah, I'm messaging someone right now. We'll be ready because I was just as I'm sitting here on stream. Okay. There was just another update from Cameron, and again, this is on his Patreon. But Cameron's, and I'm not going to quote his Patreon, read his Patreon because that's his Patreon. But he says, okay, we just said he followed up. Why can't Kathleen Kennedy cannot defeat the trades at 7:00, and then 7:20 he sends out another message saying Kathleen Kennedy humiliates herself with rambling deadline non-denial denial. Are you getting this?
Yeah, I just looked at it. Yeah, she said she doesn't want to go anywhere.
Okay.
So this fits.
Do you want to bring up the deadline article right now? And then Cameron just messaged me and he said he'd like to talk about this.
Okay.
Let's bring up this article. We got other things to talk about too, but this could be a cool night. Who knows?
Yeah, that's crazy.
This was not the way he wanted to go, but okay. Originally, the plan. So let me bring up.
Here, I think I got it.
I was trying to share my screen. For some reason, my screen often does not share. Hang on, everybody. I'm bringing up this deadline article.
Does that work?
Okay. Same article. Here, I got control of it. Okay, so here we go.
Wait, that's not the right article. Okay, you got it.
That's not it?
No. You got it. No, you got it. I had the wrong article.
Oh, okay. So Kathleen Kennedy speaks on her retiring plans. She is not soon retiring, and the films that keep her in Star Wars orbit for years to come. So this is February 27th. Is that today? Yes. Okay. 4:36 p.m. Let's see what it says. Exclusive. I thought I'd seen it all in trade journalism, but the pariah-like frenzy on Kathleen Kennedy and the successor. Okay, whatever. Go. Successor speculation that followed Matt Baloney's Puck report that Disney was putting her out to pasture is a new one on me. Baloney has for years been beating on Kennedy like she owes him money, and he this week reported Kennedy was retiring. I recall he essentially did the same thing more than a year ago, and here he is still producing the Mandalorian movie and prepping with Sean Levy directing Star Wars film. Prepping the Sean Levy directed Star Wars film, which Ryan Gosling is circling, as well as numerous other films and streaming projects with A-list participants.
So this is Kennedy's effort to fight back. This is what she always does. She tries to use the trades. This is how she got all of her fake announcements out all the other time about all these other movies. So it looks like they are trying that there was a plan to kind of have her leave, and she didn't like that this has come out early. And now she's trying to fight back. That's how this reads to me. She's trying to reverse this, but I don't think that's going to work.
Okay, so still the trades followed with gusto. dishing speculative reporting on who might succeed Kennedy. The takeaway was chaos and that Kennedy was being pushed. The reality is different and far more orderly. According to insiders, Kennedy has been working on a succession plan for a couple of years. Well, as any responsible person would. I mean, that, if you are responsible, eyeing candidates from within in the process with Bob Iger and Alan Bergman that put someone like Dave Filoni, who knows the universe inside and out, in a strong position. I admire Filoni's hustle and ability to turn over hard ground, but his penchant for defining industry people like Kennedy in disparaging ways, well, I don't understand that. I didn't appreciate it when wait, so this doesn't sound like she's not leaving. This sounds like she's leaving in a different way.
Well, yeah, let's see how he explains this.
So I didn't appreciate it when Deadline founder Nikki Fink did it here, and it feels like the appetite for Schadenfreude, is that right, is nowhere near as high now, given how this business is still trying to regain footing after the global pandemic, the year-long labor strikes, and most recently, the devastating wildfires that ravaged Southern California. Kennedy would seem an unlikely target of ire in good times or bad. 13 years into her run steering Lucasfilm, she has done much with the challenge of trying to broaden George Lucas' Star Wars vision after Disney bought it from him for $4 billion in cash and stock. It's a challenge Amazon will now try with James Bond after purchasing creative control of 007 Gatekeepers for $1 billion beyond the $8 billion they paid for MGM. We hadn't talked about. I saw that go by. I've seen other people talk about that, but I don't know much about James Bond. The acquisition of James Bond. I haven't looked into that. So Kennedy is arguably the most successful female producer executive in Hollywood history. She's produced over 70 films that have collected 120 Oscar nominations and 25 wins, and she herself was awarded with the honorary Oscar with the Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award with 8 other Oscar noms. Her resume is dotted with classics like Jurassic Park, The Sixth Sense, the Indiana Jones franchise, E.T., Munich, Lincoln, The Color Purple, War of the Worlds, Poltergeist, Schindler's List, and Back to the Future franchise, as well as many others. While it has always been a challenge to please the Star Wars faithful, and there have been some misfires, there have been some misfires, the 5 Star Wars films she has produced have grossed nearly $6 billion. Now you're talking about numbers here.
That's not profit. That's the profit. Right.
I noticed very much that they say grossed. 5 Star Wars films have grossed $6 billion. With streaming series successes topped by The Mandalorian and Andor. Sorry, Matt, the woman is a first ballot Hall of Famer, not someone who deserves to be batted around like a piñata. She also
this is such a pro-Kennedy article. They're literally attacking the other journalist.
It is an attack on the other journalist. It is. So she also deserves to have her own narrative and demystify this pseudo drama. Deadline gave her that.
They literally say she deserves to have her own narrative. I mean, they're not even hiding it. Wow.
So again, so it's not a denial. I was like, wait a minute. When I saw this email come up as I was on as live with you from what Kamran was reporting, I was like, so wait a minute. Are they trying to say that she's not retired? Now, this is not saying that. It's just that she needs to go out with her own narrative. Right. Okay.
Right. So that's right. I believe that is what she wants.
Well,
and by the way, Lance from the Outcast Creative is in the chat. I don't know if he would want to jump in and join either.
Oh, how do we do it? So the Outcast Creative says, bullshit. Gail Ann Hurd is better than her.
I love it.
Yeah, Schadenfreude. Yes, thank you.
Schadenfreude. It means to have happiness or find joy in the bad or misfortunes of your enemies.
Yes, the Outcast Creative also says, and she was the only EP on lots of those credits. Her on-hands producer credits are much smaller. I'm not saying she hasn't done some good work, but her bad defo outweighs it.
Yeah.
How do I get in touch? How do I get in touch?
Lance, would you be interested in coming on to talk about this breaking news? Just let us know in the chat. You might not be available, or it may not be something you could do. But if you were interested, you could add to the convo.
Okay.
I don't have a way. And for the rest of the chat, Lance is an industry insider. He's worked in the UK for a long time and has a lot of experience in the film industry. So he does have some pretty. He has incredible perspective on it.
He says he can pop on for a short while. I don't have. Do you have a way to contact him?
Yeah, I can on X.
Okay. Well, I'll just put in the private chat the invite.
Okay.
Link. I don't know if you've got it. So there we go.
Yeah, let me. I'll do that.
And Cameron will be coming on too. So Cameron's coming on too to talk about this.
Oh, that's a good man. That's going to be great.
So Cameron will be coming on. He said give him a few minutes too. So there we go. So continuing with this, it says, so we know what the article says that everybody's talking about. Deadline gave her that opportunity, catching her just before she headed off to be honored tonight with husband Frank Marshall at the Oscar Wilde Awards. Deadline. Oh, so this is an interview. Deadline. We've read all these speculative reports that that you are out, and there's a frenzy for the next position who's going to take over Lucasfilm. What's the truth? Let me take this down here. No, I saw. Hey, we'll get to the supersat in just a moment. I'm sorry, Skyrim Clip. I have that starred. I saw that just as all of this was coming in. So we will get to that. Sorry about that. We will do that. Deadline says, we've read all these speculative reports that you are out, that there's a frenzy for the next position who's going to take over Lucasfilm. What's the truth? Kathleen Kennedy. The truth is, and I want to just say loud and clear, I'm not retiring. Oh, she does say that here. I will never retire from movies. I will die making movies. This is the first thing that's important to say. I'm not retiring. What's happening at Lucasfilm is that I have been talking for quite some time with both Bob and Alan about what eventual succession might look like. We have an amazing bench of people here, and we have every intention of making an announcement months or a year. And we have every intention of making an announcement months or a year down the road. We are in lockstep as to what's going to be, and I am continuing. I'm producing The Mandalorian, the movie right now, and I'm also producing Sean Levy's movie.
That's her. That. She's been pushing that by herself.
So I'm continuing to stay at Lucasfilm and looking very thoroughly with Bob and looking very thoughtfully with Bob and Alan as to who's stepping in. So that is all underway, and we have every right to make that announcement when we want to make it. Well, that's kind of muddled right there.
Well, so she's saying she wants to make films. So she's denying that she's retiring. So what she's saying is and this is what a lot of people who I have some confidence in have been speculating, that she's going to continue to work on her own studio, that she's going to have her own studio. She's going to go do her own thing, and she can make the kind of films she wants to make. And then she will make, maybe the kind of films that she thought she should have been making this whole time. So I believe her that she isn't retiring, and I do believe her that she is going to make more films and that she wants to make more films. I don't have any doubt about that. So that's what she's denying. But
right,
she is still saying that she. So the best minds that have commented on the trades say that they were going to make the announcement in April for Star Wars Celebration that Kennedy was leaving. So she just said right here, we have every intention of making the announcement in months. And now I feel like she's threatening, or even a year down the road.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So we've got Lance here.
All right.
Let's bring him on. Welcome.
Hey. How's it going?
What's happening, Lance? Have you here? Lance,
am I on Heath's channel? Is it whose channel am I on?
This is my channel. This is
Heath Robinson.
I wanted to say, Heath, nice to meet you, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Yes.
The invitation extends both ways. You're welcome on my channel anytime.
Oh, okay. All right.
So just quickly, I've worked in the industry full time since '97, predominantly in independent film and stage productions rather than for studios and things like that. But of course, you spend a lot of your time trying to raise money for films, that bigger film projects that don't happen, and as a result of that, you meet people at every level. So I know people who've worked for Lucasfilm. I know people who've worked under Kennedy. I know loads of people who've worked on the recent Star Wars productions that have shot in the UK. Mm-hmm. So I have a fairly good handle on the industry and how it works and that kind of thing. Kennedy's history and her career, and I did a very short stream about this yesterday because I didn't want to give her too much airtime, to be honest. I just think you have two types of producers, right? You have producers who do the bare minimum but take the maximum paycheck that they can, and their priority is never necessarily about what is the finished product. It's really about, I'm raising X amount of money for you. What is the biggest percentage of that money that I can take? And there's a lot of film producers like that at every level in the industry,
just to create a big money pool that they can take from at the
end.
The
people that screwed me over on my movie, the big movie that I was supposed to have that fell through the floor because these people did what they did. This is the reason that they did it. And they were getting paid $300,000 each of a £9 million movie budget. That sounds like a small budget, but for me, trust me, it was massive. And a standard producer's fee in the industry used to be 3%. So if you're a producer and let's say Douglas, you were raising, you said, oh, I'm going to raise 10 million for you for a movie, I would say, thanks, Doug. Your standard fee would be 3%, but as my movie budget is £10 million and I need 10 million and you're getting me all of the budget, well, I think your producer's fee should be 6% or maybe even 10. It might go like that. These guys, when they stole the money and put it onto another film, they basically they raised £3.5 million and they paid themselves £750,000 each plus their expenses, which came to 2.1 million. So of the
like 60%.
Yeah, so of the £3.5 million, they took £2.1 million for themselves, and then
so it's a scam.
Well, I mean, the film got made, but with substantially less budget than it should have been. The film was rubbish, and that film has never been released. It's not my movie. This is the film that they stole the money for.
We've got Kamran coming in. We've got one other guest to join us here who's talking about this. Who we were just talking about. Kamran, we were just going over the Deadline article. Hey, Kamran, I got the link. I saw your email come through. We were just talking about that. We brought on Lance from Outcast Creatives, and we haven't finished reading the Deadline article. If we need to, we can go to certain points of it.
Sorry if I took you down a bit of a rabbit hole with my.
Real quick, Kamran meet Lance. Lance meet Kamran. Lance is an industry insider who works. He has worked full time since 1997 in the UK with a lot of the film studios there. And Lance, Kamran is a Hollywood screenwriter who's got a ton of TV shows under his resume. He's also written and published 2 books. So Kamran is also an insider.
I share your hell. I share your hell, Kamran.
At least you have good Indian food where you are, which my hell is in Los Angeles.
Mate, I just had Indian. I was just talking about the 2 different types of producers that I've met, and then your ideal producer is a producer who works with the director, solves their problems. Yes, they get money, but they're what's called a hands-on producer. Doesn't mean that they interfere, but they're hands-on. And a producer's main job, right, outside of raising money for a movie, is to solve problems for the production, is to solve problems before they get to the director, protect the director, protect their vision, and
like
make sure that kind of like that, but to insulate them, to ensure that they get their vision and solve the problems around them on the production that happens. That's what a hands-on producer does. So just taking Kennedy into this analogy, if Kennedy was a hands-off producer on, let's say, The Acolyte, then she took a substantial portion of that budget, paid herself a substantial portion of fees, but was hands-off and just let the creator go off and do their own thing, in which case she did a terrible job because she should have guided that project and made sure it delivered.
Well, she's guided nothing. I mean, she's guided nothing in the course of her career at Lucasfilm. I mean, she
was hands-on and did a terrible job because she still did an awful job. And
I mean, the reports we've had is that she's been hands-off everything until it's too late, like the Solo movie,
and then comes in heavy-handed.
Yeah, she comes in when it's 80% filmed and says, "Let me look at the dailies." I mean, as you know, the producer is looking at the dailies that night rather than 6 months later. Oh, this is in the movie. I mean, that's not what a producer does, but whatever. So I have to ask your forgiveness, Lance. I only have 20 minutes. Please, I don't want to interrupt your flow. I have to share some thoughts because
I kind of made my point on that, so you're all good.
All right, go right in. And if we need to bring up part of this Deadline article, Cameron, we can.
Well, we will. So the reason I'm coming on today, Lance, and to those who are watching, is that I wrote a lengthy piece on. I have a Patreon. I've got a few hundred people reading it. Wrote a lengthy piece just a few hours ago about why the fact that the trades, for the first time, we talk about the two primary trades, the historical trades, Hollywood Reporter and Variety, the ones that have been here since 1930s, right? Those trades have been all gung for 2 days now saying Kathleen Kennedy is leaving. Here's the list of people being considered for her thing. I mean, a lot of very detailed stuff, not rumors. And the fandom has been hoping and rumoring that for many years, but it's the first time that multiple Hollywood trades have said that and started talking about her succession, right? And have each of them claimed to have gotten it from multiple sources. Lance, you know that the trades are essentially the mouthpiece of the system, right? They're not independent journalism. And so when multiple trades report something like a studio head leaving, and then listing lengthy succession plans, that's information that has been given to them by people in power, and they're being told to disseminate that. The interesting thing is the third trade, the more recent trade, Deadline, which is also owned by the same company as Variety, but they have separate editorial approaches, right? So Deadline said nothing for the last 2 days. It kept silent. It didn't even acknowledge it. And then suddenly, and so I wrote a lengthy piece on my Patreon today about why when something is announced in trades, you're kind of trapped, right? Because if a movie is announced by the studio in the trades, it's very hard to walk it back and pretend you're not making it, right? And so if someone is and I think you know that, Lance, throughout history, people have kind of manipulated the trades to put out information that they want. And then once it becomes in the trades, it's the official narrative. And then suddenly other people are forced to go along with it or look really stupid, right? So if, let's say, hypothetically, the alleged Ray movie that has been talked about for 2 years was never real, but Kathleen Kennedy announced it in the trades that she's making a Ray movie with Daisy Ridley, and that had not been authorized by Bob Iger, he's kind of trapped because he can't come out and say the trades are wrong, because that would destroy the entire system, because that would make people ask, well, the trades are wrong and she's made this announcement. Is she not in charge? Bob, who's in charge if she's not in charge? Those are questions you don't want asked. So once the trade announcement comes in, it takes control of narrative. And so she's done this, in my opinion, multiple times, including with The Acolyte. We're now seeing
in Indiana Jones.
With The Acolyte, I theorized when she first announced it several years ago, when Bob Chapek was in power, that it wasn't real and that she didn't actually have Chapek's green light. Now, in the lawsuit that Karen McCarthy, the producer, who was going to be the hands-on producer, Lance, of that show, and they got fired 2 weeks into it, her lawsuit against Lucasfilm, they amended that lawsuit at the end of last year because in discovery, they found evidence through depositions and documents that what I speculated is true. That the amended lawsuit now claims that there was never a green light, that they hired Karen under false pretenses, implying that it was a media purpose, that she was hired because the project looks real if you have a major line producer attached to it. Then suddenly Bob Chapek has no choice but to green light it because it looks real to the public, and you can't say Kathleen Kennedy is running around making announcements without permission, because that destroys the trust in the entire system, right? So now, with that said, just a few minutes ago, Kathleen Kennedy finally spoke out about these trade reports that she is retiring this year and there is a succession plan. And she came out in a long, lengthy interview with Mike Fleming in Deadline. And what's interesting, it's a long, rambling interview. But let's get to the final sentence. You want to put up the final sentence, Heath? Because I think everyone on YouTube is not going to get to that final sentence, which is her hope.
Let's bring it up.
The final thing he asks her and what she says, because that's the end of the entire rambling nonsense. Let's get to this lengthy article. Let's see the final question. Deadline, when it happens. You want to read that, Heath? Read that out loud and her answer.
Deadline, when it happens, who will make the decision?
As in when are you going to leave?
When are you going to leave?
No, actually, no, I'm sorry. Let's go. Let's go back one. It was the one right above it. The two final questions.
Okay. Final two questions. Deadline. Two final questions. Will you step out as Lucasfilm boss this year? Kennedy, we really don't know at this stage. Whoa. There's so much going on, Mike. I don't know. Deadline.
The correct answer to that question, if you're the head of a major studio, is I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving.
I don't know. Like you wouldn't know if you're leaving, right?
Correct. The answer when you say I don't know, the answer is I'm leaving, but I can't say it. No studio head says I don't know when asked if they're going to keep their powerful position that makes them one of the inner elite of Hollywood. The answer is always I am staying. I don't know where you got this idea. So after all this rambling nonsense about, because her whole thing is I'm not retiring. And she says, I'm not retiring. I'm going to be making movies forever. Well, that's not the question. The final question is, I'm sure you're going to keep making movies. You can make Twister 7 when you're gone. Nobody cares, right? The question that she answered here and did not answer is, are you leaving this year? Which is what the two rival trades reported. And she finally bumbles and says, we don't know at this stage. Who's the we? I thought you're in charge. And so the next thing, we don't know at this stage. So let's see the next question and how she covers that.
Deadline. When it happens, who'll make the decision? Kennedy, me. It's my decision. This is 100%.
So it went from we to me because she's backed against a wall. The we is correct. The we is Bob Iger and other people who have her destiny in their hands. The Disney board, other people. That's we. Suddenly, the we means you're not the one making the decision. Now she has to cover herself again. Now it's a me. 100%. Whenever you have to say 100%, you don't actually believe it. You don't actually believe it. I mean, Doug, am I incorrect about human nature? When something is true, you don't have to reiterate it.
When was this interview? When was
it? It came out 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, this is breaking news.
This is breaking news, right?
And Lance, she is in London. She's not in the offices in Lucasfilm.
How dare she come to my country?
Well, she hides there because she's not allowed in the office of Lucasfilm a long time ago. But she's not. She's answering these questions from London when she's supposed to be running a studio in San Francisco.
So,
and
Cameron,
there's nothing filming right now that requires her to be in London. So why is the studio head? How many studio heads are in London for no reason whatsoever when they have a job to do, right? So the article, because we're going to see a lot of our fellows on YouTube and the fandom will say, look, she's not leaving. She just said she's leaving because the answer is I'm not leaving rather than I don't know.
Well, Cameron, so what I noticed is she's defiant and waving her fist at the idea that she's retiring. And that's not what we're concerned about. We don't care about.
It's a word game.
Right. That's right.
Saying, she's trying to muddle it because, oh, no, she can not retire and make another movie. That's fine. We care about exactly the second question. Are you the Lucasfilm boss? That's what we're talking about.
And what she says is, and the further muddling of it is she's trying to say, well, I will be attached to Star Wars forever because there are all these projects like the Simon Kinberg trilogy, which so far does not appear to exist. You know, my own contacts inside of Lucasfilm have told me, Kinberg handed a script like a year ago. We shelved it. There's nothing there, right? It's not real, but like Kinberg was using the same trade thing. He announced that he had Ryan Gosling in this movie. I asked my contacts at Lucasfilm. They're like, Ryan Gosling, first we've heard of it, right? We haven't even looked at his script in a year because we're not making this movie right now. And so he did the same thing. And guess what? 2 weeks after he announces that, he gets his Dungeons and Dragons movie at Netflix because he raised his profile, which is what you do, correct, Lance, in the trades. You use the trade to make announcements to raise your profile. You say, I'm working on this project with a star, and then you can close your real deal you're trying to close over there because now you've got leverage publicly. That's how this works. You know what? Because I have to make those considerations when I have a trade announcement. Do I announce it now, or will there be proper leverage if I announce it at another time? I'm going to do that right now with a project that I'm working on closing right now. Do we announce it immediately, or do we not say anything for this, and this reason? Those are the strategic discussions I'm having with the producers right now. And that's because the trades are there to create impressions. If you are suddenly sound like you're really busy in the trades, you get more work, right? That's how it works. I mean, I presented a lot of opinions. And Lance, I would let you speak. And if you disagree with me, please feel free. But these are my strong opinions.
No, I agree with everything you're saying. I also, what needs to be said, because you've mentioned it several times about this project going into development or that project going into development. There's a lot of money to be made in developing a project, because every time a project goes into development or is given money for development, that's money to the producer and the main writer to develop that project. What that means is that the producer, whoever is attached to that project, Kennedy or anyone else, is getting a paycheck to develop that project.
Correct.
So every time she's announcing one of these things, she's also entitling herself to another paycheck. That's another paycheck I'm getting to develop that film. That's another paycheck I'm getting to develop that film. And you know, and that's what people do. They don't put all their eggs in one basket. They throw as many eggs out as possible. Whether someone at her level will get paid for developing those projects, whether they happen or not. So when you think about how many different Star Wars projects were announced, when you got that big picture of all those different things that she announced, if she's technically going to be able to say, well, I'm developing all of these, so I need to be paid X. And they can't really say, no, you can't. I said, well, you know, I'm working with this writer and I'm working with these people and I'm working with this person and this designer. And so we need a bit of money for them and a bit of money for this. So that's a little cottage industry of its own, which I'm sure she knows exactly how to exploit to the maximum.
Just guide us, Lance, because what this is essentially money laundering to your friends. That's what this is. You announce projects that are not real, and then the studio is forced to now finance a script they're never going to use and keep your friends working and keep your friends loyal to you. You buy your friends, you buy your enemies through these deals.
And it doesn't matter if it's good or not.
Doesn't matter if it's ever going to get
Or
made.
if it ever
Doesn't matter if it's on a plate.
Oh, Cam, I sent you a message on Facebook so you can get hold of me easily, just to let you know.
And that is a current list of all the projects that are being worked on right there. So,
Doug has put together all of this. So this is all stuff that is supposed to be happening.
Well, this is the recent media presentation of Lucasfilm at the current moment.
Star Wars Visions Season 3. Did I miss Star Wars Visions Season 1 and 2? I don't remember.
I saw the first season. It seemed like it was pretty off-brand for Star Wars.
I don't know what that is.
And
No,
it's animated. It was one-off animated shows that were all different animation styles, all different stories. And I thought they got pretty off-brand with it.
Oh, okay. I know.
I think I do.
I know the thing you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
Some people liked it. You know, like there was one with real samurais and stuff that took place in the Star Wars universe. So it was bizarre, but some people liked it. I didn't see season 2 though.
Well, I mean, Rogue Squadron is dead. The Taika Waititi movie is dead.
What I'm saying is it has that.
There's no Mangold movie.
Yeah.
If you notice, by the way, you don't know this, Lance. She's announcing all of these things as projects she's working on in that interview. She's like, "Oh, I'm doing the Simon Kinberg thing. I'm doing the Taika Waititi thing. I'm doing James Mangold. The James Mangold thing." She's talking about all these things that we know are not real. We know we don't know they're not real because there's no announcements of any further development in months or years on these projects.
So is she saying that to basically tell her friends, don't worry, I'm still trying to get you a few bucks?
Well, she's not telling her friends because she doesn't have any, because her friends would have come out and supported her, right? Nobody supported her. That's why she has to humiliate herself by doing an interview with Deadline and say, no, I'm not being pushed out of my... Literally, they ask her, Lance, you will understand this. They asked, Deadline didn't even do softballs with her. They said, what you're describing sounds kind of like a very chaotic situations out of Lucasfilm. They said that to her directly and she had to deny it. And then they said, we're not claiming this, but it kind of looks like you're being pushed out, Kathleen. They actually said it to her face. And she had to say, I'm not being pushed out. That is not how you treat the head of a studio who's in charge.
Yeah. So translation to that article, it's I'm not denying that I'm leaving. I'm just denying that I'm retiring. That's what that article basically
That's
says.
exactly. I'm denying retiring. I don't think George Lucas is really retired. I'm sure he's still got ideas for maybe I could make this thing, because artists don't retire. Lance, you're never going to retire. You're always going to be creating.
No, I'll be working on stuff until the day.
I'm never out.
And Cameron, you said a long time ago, Cameron, your thought was the most likely scenario with Kathleen Kennedy is she will leave Lucasfilm and she will either join or found a new studio and make the kind of movie she wants to make. That is still in play with that article. That she could.
That's what she's saying she's going to do.
Right.
I mean, it's so sad because the unfortunate thing is it's so degrading and demeaning. She is talking down to stupid people. She says the only people that are going to believe this and not see what this is are stupid people. Sadly, a substantial portion of YouTube is filled with stupid people, and people give them super chats to give their stupid analysis. So she's talking to them, and she's talking to dumb people. Like if you read the chat, if you read the comments in the Deadline article, 90% of them are like, She's lying. She's out. We know. And there's always where it's like, oh, look at you, stupid, toxic Star Wars fan. She ain't going anywhere. She's talking to that moron. She's talking to that moron because it's so sad that that's the best thing you have is people you know are stupid. You know that's the best you got is to make them believe in you. I mean,
I just went to the Hollywood Reporter and Variety, and she's not. Kennedy doesn't even track on the search, so she's not on.
Because Hollywood Reporter has staked its reputation on she is leaving, and here's a succession plan.
Right.
It staked its reputation on it can't back down because it said it got it from multiple sources. Variety did the same thing. Deadline stayed silent because they decided, we're just going to be on Kennedy's camp, right? Because Deadline, let's be frank, is even more. Deadline is one of those that is very much let's pretend to be very progressive and embrace progressive values like feminism and trans rights and things. That particular trade has a narrative. So when the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp thing was happening, they were 100% pro Amber Heard. Never was there once a suggestion that Amber Heard could be lying, even though the whole planet came to believe that. Same thing is happening right with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. The Hollywood Reporters doing real reporting on what was happening at Sony on in that disaster of a production. And Deadline is like, nope, Blake is telling the truth. Blake is telling the truth. It's all a lie. I mean, because their whole narrative, for some reasons, about who is behind Deadline, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut about that, right? I don't want to make them more of an enemy than I am. But but Deadline needs to back certain progressive voices, and so they said nothing because Kennedy is the top feminist in Hollywood, the most powerful woman. They could not jump on the train, even though they know it's true. The reason why I know it's true is because Mike Fleming is asking her hard questions. He's saying it feels like you're being pushed out. You don't do that in Hollywood. That's not what you do when you talk to studio head.
Well, Cameron, by the way, on to this question. Let me ask Cameron about this question. So I'm looking at this right here as I was scrolling through things that were said. Deadline asks, so even when you hand the reins of Lucasfilm to a protege, it sure sounds like you're going to be in that world for 8 to 10 years. Fair? ? Kennedy says, I don't know if I'm going to say that, but yeah, it's possible.
Sure, it's possible that JFK wasn't shot and it was all a staged assassination, and he's still out there and he's on a beach somewhere. That's possible.
Notice every time he asks a tough question, she gives a very short answer.
Yeah, I've just been reading through it now.
Yeah, I mean, Lance, you can see the baloney. You can see the desperation of the baloney. And I can say that because the reason why Hollywood Reporter and Variety are not afraid of her, and even Deadline is kind of not afraid of her, is they all know it's over. There's nothing she can do. There's nothing she should do. I mean, there's nothing she can do to anybody.
That is a crazy. I mean, yeah, that's
it's a crazy answer. You don't say I don't know. The correct thing to say is I'm going nowhere.
Yeah. If you're trying to reassure people, you issue definitive statements.
I think she just doesn't like the tone of this announcement the last couple days, and I think this is her effort to kind of douse the excitement. That's what I think. Yeah,
it is. But it makes, at least to intelligent people, it makes her look stupid. And it makes her look desperate. It makes her look like the kid who's telling the teacher, I'm sorry. I did hand in the homework. I don't know why it's not on the server. That kind of thing, right? And so give me another 6 days and I'll fix the server and you'll have the homework, right? That's what it sounds like. And so forgive me, Lance, I talked over you a lot today. I didn't let you talk much. I have to go.
No, that's okay.
But maybe you guys can continue this conversation.
I knew.
And I would love to get Lance's perspective.
We want to hear you, Cameron.
Cam, I've sent you a message on Facebook, so it'll probably be in your other message box.
I'm looking. I do not. Did you try to friend me? I'm trying to look in Facebook.
I haven't sent you a friend. It's Kamran Pasha, right?
Yeah, there's a few Kamran Pasha, so I'm not sure which one.
Have you got a friend called David Quino, who's a mutual friend of ours?
I don't know. So why don't you just give me your Facebook and I'll friend you? Is that fair?
Mine's easy because it's Lance Steen Anthony Nielsen. I'm literally the only one. I'll send you a friend request on the profile here. I'm pretty sure this is you. You also
if it looks like my face, then it's me. If it's my face, then it's me.
Otherwise, looks like your it's your face but with hair on the sides.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. So, if I don't find it, I'll ask Heath to make sure I connect properly with you.
Yes, we
No,
will
I may have
connect. Yes,
just.
yes.
I mean, I may have just connected.
I'm sorry.
with a different
There's somebody
author
else out there
filmmaker.
running a fake Cameron Pasha.
I've got a few.
Facebook,
Like I've left. I'm not on
or
Twitter.
something, right.
There's a couple of fake Kamran Pasha accounts with like 5 followers, but that's not me.
I'm pretty sure this is you. You've got a Patreon and everything. So I'm
Well,
pretty sure.
I mean, I'll let you guys continue the conversation. Lance, the fact that Lance understands how PR works, he knows this is there's money when you make a trade announcement. Money flows in its direction, and people don't understand why trade announcements of fake projects are made because money is activated with trade announcements, even if they're not real. Right. And so that's what happens. And so, yeah, so this is, sadly, people are going to fall for it because they're going to want to keep falling for it because they don't want to see what's happening here. Anyone who reads this article can say, I mean, she's not denying she's leaving. She's not denying that that she can't commit to that she's going to still be involved, even if she does leave. That doesn't sound like a person in a position of strength and in charge of the narrative, right? And the fact that she had to do this rather than Disney, Bob Iger, the simplest solution to all of this would have been Bob Iger or Alan Bergman issuing a denial on her behalf in the last 48 hours.
Well, and her boss pattern.
They have nothing. I mean,
this her pattern.
Do this herself instead of Bob Iger saying, "I don't know what," because Bob Iger in the past, when confronted on shareholders calls, says, "I'm deeply committed to Kathleen Kennedy. She's not going anywhere." He could have said something the last 2 days when the whole system was saying she's leaving. Bob Iger said nothing. Alan Bergman said nothing. So she is supposed to do this degrading interview where she's covering her butt and bragging and all I got to say is these reports are not true. We look forward to working with Kathleen Kennedy for the extended future. What a simple statement. It would have gone away. He didn't do it. And then now he has to do it.
Well, and if Variety and the Hollywood Reporter reported what they did, somebody important leaked that information to them. So this didn't come from
their reputation is on the line. Their reputation with the system, because they cannot release the studio head, a controversial female studio head who's been there for 15 years. They cannot say she is leaving unless they have vetted this from multiple people at the top of the system. Right. Because they are finished. They are finished. And she's not claiming they lied. She's claiming it's a misunderstanding that there was because Hollywood Reporter has presented a succession plan in its articles of possible candidates. She's saying these were my ideas. This is my succession plan that I've been coming up for years, right? She's not throwing the trades under the bus, because if she does that, Blake Lively attacked Hollywood Reporter last week for its cover, right? Where it makes her look like, fighting David and Goliath, and called the interview sexist, the article sexist about how she's fighting Baldoni. So what has happened since then? Hollywood Reporter has been doing report after report about the chaos and kind of suggesting Blake Lively was responsible for the chaos because she made an enemy of the trades. Once you say the trades are sexist or lying or this and that, the trades are like, oh, you don't understand who creates narrative in this town, do you? Now the narrative is going to be, we're just going to keep revealing things about that production because you attacked us. You don't attack the trades. If you attack the trades, you are done.
So, Cameron, what do you think?
I got last question. I'm sorry.
Okay, last question. What might be the next move? So obviously, whoever's important to who said she is leaving is going to not like this article and be irritated by it. So they're going to have to strike a deal and respond. Is she going to announce her new studio in the next week? What do you think might
they'll let it calm down now for a few weeks. The next major point is the Star Wars celebration in April. They're going to let it calm down for a month, at which point they'll be like, okay, now because she said this is 100% my decision, let her come out at celebration and said, here's my wonderful succession plan. That's what's going to be put into effect. She is just salvaged. She's going to come down the stage there and introduce her successor, I think. And that's going to be a gun to her head. That's what they're going to tell her to do.
I think Iger wants one successor and she wants another. And I feel like part of that is
her call is irrelevant. She has no call in this. She's out. All right, forgive me, Lance. I'm so sorry I couldn't talk to you. I will respond to you on Facebook. And I got to go. I'm late for something. So everyone continue watching the channel.
Thank you very much for coming, Cameron. I'll be in touch.
Yeah, Cameron.
Thank you so much for coming. That's fantastic. Thank you, Cameron.
Hey, Charlie, that's awesome, man.
Okay. And then, by the way, in the background, as I have been watching, has just come in we have a new guest who has like been watching it. Like she came in, she popped up, and I've been like watching her eyes, like being like, "What is going on?" Because we were talking about a Kathleen Kennedy, and she stepped into the middle of breaking news. So retro nerd girl.
Oh man, I haven't seen you for so long.
She just came in.
What's up, retro?
What's going on? Like, okay, so yes,
So yeah, we ended up doing breaking news.
we ended
Kennedy
up in breaking news. So
is trying to disrupt the flow of energy and excitement about her imminent departure. And we noticed by reading the article that she essentially denies that she's retiring. And at the end of the article, they said, "Are you leaving?" And she goes, "I don't know." So
I don't
not
know.
quite the denial it sounded like.
Yeah, I just read it really quickly, and it just feels like a lot of fluffy answers. It doesn't really feel like it sounds like workaround, and it's fine. I don't think we all care, but that she mentions it or not, we just know that something is happening, and we think it ought to happen. So something ought to happen.
We should probably look at the rest of this article and talk about it.
I've been reading it through while our other guest was speaking.
And while you're doing that, I wanted to
let's do that. Let me bring that up so we can discuss it. Let me see if
there's an answer that she gives in the middle, a very long answer.
Well, let's go back to where we were, like before Cameron.
Where did you get to the bit where she meant where they asked her about Kevin Feige?
I think we only got to
we
got to her first answer.
I'll hang fire because this is further on.
Okay. So deadline that you are looking within seems to give credence to what exactly was going on here. I'm producing the Mandalorian movie right now. I'm also producing Sean Levy's movie, which is after that. I'm continuing staring at Lucasfilm and looking very thoughtfully at Bob and Alan as to stepping in. So all that's underway. Okay, so deadline says that you are looking within seems to give credence to what we've heard, that an exec like Chief Creative Officer Dave Filoni is in good position as he works on Star Wars to write and direct. Kennedy says, I can't say who it is because there's just an internal process that goes on inside a large corporation and a publicly held company as to how we can go about making deals, final decisions, and making announcements. There's nothing unusual about that, and we're in the process.
Now, hold on a second. She goes, I can't say who it is. Scroll up real quick. I can't say who it is. Gives credence that they're looking. Oh, so she's admitting that there is someone. There is
that's true. I can't say who it is. She doesn't say there is no one. She says I can't say who it is. Right. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, you can't keep somebody on hold forever. Like if you do have a name of somebody, you can't keep them waiting forever.
Well, they said, it's Favreau, Filoni, some combination sounds like.
But that's not a denial that there is somebody who's there to replace you.
She's not denying it. She's not denying that it could be Filoni.
So if there is someone, they can't be on hold forever.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So deadline says this fury of press coverage. It sounds like chaos. What's the reality? Kennedy says chaos. There's never been any chaos because we know exactly what the plan is. And we've been talking about it, as I said, nonstop for the last couple of years, because for obvious reason, I'm not going to be here forever. George asked me 13 years ago to step in, and now I'm looking at who's going to replace me. And as I said, we have a bench of people internally to handle the business, the creative side. The job has grown also since I stepped in. There was no streaming. There weren't a lot of things that we're involved in right now. So
that sounds like she's angling for a better severance package. Doesn't it? Doesn't it sound like she's like, well, I did this thing and now the job got bigger, so if I'm going to leave, it seems like that should be accommodated.
Deadline says, how far down the road do you expect before a change gets made and then you go off and produce these two big Star Wars things? Okay. Kennedy says, we'll probably make an announcement months or a year out, and I have every intention of sticking around to help that person be successful. I'm already producing the Mandalorian movie. She keeps saying that.
Yeah, and Sean's is after that.
Everybody to know that. I'm producing the Mandalorian movie, and Sean's after that. Well, month still lines up with the end of the year.
Right. Well, April. From what I understand in those other articles, the plan was to announce her departure in April. and that in this article the other day preempted that, which is angering her. And this is her attempt to kind of, she wants the announcement. I think she wants to do it. She wants the perception that she's stepping away and not getting pushed out. And that article took that away from her. And this is her trying to take it back. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, you can even tell when he's, the questioner says chaos. She goes, "What chaos? There's no chaos. It's
Chaos. Everything's perfectly orderly,
according to plan." It's just kind of it's. I mean, I've seen it before. It's PR spin. In a few months, she can announce that there's a replacement, and then she'll train them for 2 years, and that's pretty much.
If it's going to
I can't see anybody wanting her to be around for 2 years.
This is going to be the same plan that they had for the new Star Wars trilogy, right, Kathleen? That kind of plan, like no plan.
Yeah. And she sounds, and of course it's hard. It's like reading a text or an email. She sounds a little testy in that the way she's responding. And as I said before, and then I said, there's no chaos. That's a denial. There's like Retro just said. So I think Cameron's right. They are asking her some pointed questions. These aren't softballs. And she's getting touchy and rambling.
There's a more testy answer coming up.
Yeah. Okay. So Deadline says, I recall these same retirement predictions were rendered a while ago, and you re-upped, and here you are. What do you make of the fixation on your job status? Kennedy says, I truly don't know. And any discussion previously about me retiring or quitting or any of those things, that's complete rumor mill, because through all these reports, I have just continued doing my job and continuing my contract. Nothing unusual. It has all just been manufactured.
She's still talking about retiring. That's not what we're asking her. We don't care if she retires. We care if she leaves Lucasfilm.
That's right. Right. Deadline says and I think that's very clear throughout all this. That's what she's trying to muddle. Deadline says the connotation is that you're being pushed aside in need of being replaced, though that's not what I've heard. Kennedy says it's absolutely not the case. It could not be further from the truth. And everything we do inside of Lucasfilm is kept in lockstep and in communication with Disney. We all know what's going on. The communication has been completely collaborative, as you would expect. This is a big piece of business for them, and they want to empower me and help them make decisions and that choice. I'm doing that.
This isn't going her way. I just sense that.
Yeah.
I sense a disturbance in the Force.
The Force is strong with you, Lance.
Okay, well, Deadline says, this is a long question. Okay, so Deadline asks, well, you know what? I'm placing some blame on Marvel's Kevin Feige because he had that magnificent streak of superhero hits and set an impossible high bar. When you hold Star Wars, really? But now he's starting to take shrapnel. How daunting is it to run a company based on a beloved and iconic IP? What has been the most challenging thing about running Lucasfilm when fans of the original trilogy fixate measuring everything against it and don't see the business need of broadening the franchise when Disney paid so much for it? Will now go it's what will now go through with James Bond. Whoa, what a question that is.
It's her answer to this that I wanted to offer some comment on, but
that's pretty. I mean, yeah. So I want to know where she goes with this, but I mean that's a pretty crazy question in saying that Kevin Feige had Marvel, and we were talking about through Endgame the other night that what a magnificent run that is, and what an absolutely stellar achievement everything Marvel did from the beginning of Marvel through Endgame is. And he's saying that's an impossible, like it's almost covering for her. This is an impossibly high bar, even though Marvel wasn't anything like what Star Wars is.
I mean, he's basically saying all these people, Lucas was successful with the original trilogy. Feige was successful with the 23 film cinematic universe. How could we hold you to those standards?
No, I know. It's almost telling her it's daunting to run a company that has the kind of like legacy and belovedness that Star Wars has.
That's what you signed on for.
Like, oh my God, how could you possibly do something like Marvel when you are handicapped by having Star Wars? That's how that question reads to me. Is that how that reads to you?
I agree, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
because like, oh man, that I just have such a challenge about owning Star Wars and having to make a Star Wars movie. Okay, so let's see what
What a
Kennedy said.
cross to bear.
What kind of okay? So all right, so then here Kennedy says, and this is what Lance is talking about. Kennedy says, "It is something I think about all the time. It's fascinating to think about how you sustain a brand, especially Star Wars, which is just about to celebrate its 50th anniversary. And so to analyze and to understand what was inspiring George when he created Star Wars, when he was still looking at Saturday matinees and Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, and those things of the past, and politically what he was reflecting in his stories, because Star Wars has always had a kind of world building, and it reflects a certain amount of society. The world, needless to say, is changing by the second, and consequently, the audience has changed dramatically. How they consume things. We're seeing this reflected in the health of the movie business and what it really means for streaming, and what are all these other platforms that may be on the horizon. We're trying to look forward, and at the same time, you're trying to create stories that feel similar. You're moving into the future, but they're maintaining a sense of familiarity. I think that's the hardest balance."
That's
Go
not being achieved at all.
Yeah, I've got so much to say about that response. While she might try and turn this on its head with the world has changed, so we've got to change with it and all the rest of it. My counter argument to that, and I'll take Acolyte as a case in point, is the principles of storytelling, the principles of script writing, which are the basic blocks for any film or television series, have not changed. They haven't changed over time. You've got your various different formats, your 3-act structure, your 5-act structure, and all the rest of it. But good storytelling basics have not changed. Also, the lore of Star Wars is, you need to think of it as like one of those balls with the made up of the rubber bands, and it's got bigger as opposed to contracting. But the core essence of what it is still there and needs to be respected, and you shouldn't be breaking rules willy-nilly. You should also not be employing writers who haven't done the proper research and start writing characters and putting them in an episode when actually that character won't be there in that timeline, because if you'd done your research, you'd know that they were already dead, or they weren't there, or as happened in the Acolyte, and then they
Kiara Mundi.
and then they actually changed the law to fit that, which was just an absolute travesty. And these are really basic mistakes being made at the top level of probably the most beloved IP in the world, in the history of the world, being produced by supposedly one of the top level studios / production companies. So they should be holding themselves up to incredibly high standards, and the work has just got sloppy. Now, if your previous guest, if what your previous guest said is true, and Kennedy was a very hands-off producer on her work generally, which would explain a lot, then you have to ask, who is the showrunner, and what are they doing to steer the ship? And if that showrunner is not experienced, why have they got that job? So these are all questions that are nothing to do with Star Wars needs to change, society's changed, etc. These are all questions that need to be answered about why the show is so rubbish, because they're the reasons that it's gone so downhill. And I mean, I was talking about this on another stream yesterday, and we talked, for example, about how poorly the additional bounty hunter characters from Empire Strikes Back that we all loved. We all wanted a Bosk figure, and we all wanted IG-88, and we all wanted to know about these guys and where they came from. And somebody said to me the other day, why didn't they make Mandalorian, one of the seasons of Mandalorian, like the Magnificent Seven, except he had to go and recruit all those bounty hunters you saw in Empire Strikes Back.
That would have been phenomenal.
And they went on a mission together. And I said, yeah, that's great. It doesn't matter that it's been done before, because we want that, and we want to find out more about those guys, and we want to see them doing bounty hunter stuff. That's what we want on a bounty hunter show with Boba Fett kind of leading them.
Yeah.
And that would have been a great Boba Fett show. What did we get? We got Boba Fett the granddad years. You know, it was
Right.
so again, you have to wonder what stories were pitched in a room, and but it all comes back to the basics. The basics of storytelling haven't changed. You know, it's not. I don't think it's that hard to write a really great Star Wars script. So why is it that we're getting such poor quality material? So I think she's completely sidestepping the core issues that have been the problem with all this waffle nonsense about we've got to modernize and we're trying to reflect society, and that's all to do with
the world is changing,
social messaging.
But see, that is
social messaging in that response.
I've noticed this argument constructed many times since Star Wars changed hands, and the basic premise is the world's changing, which is such a bland, non-specific statement. How is it changing, and what? How does that really apply? And I think that the world has not changed that much. The archetypal principles of storytelling have not changed. The medium that people are experiencing on it, they're streaming now. There's different ways to access it and all that. But that's not the same as telling a good story. And they keep saying things like, if we diversify our cast, they will come. If you build it, they will come. If you diversify, meaning the Acolyte what they're basically saying is diversity in and of itself is a moral principle. And I would argue that it's not a moral principle. It is if you have a diverse cast, it might be awesome. It might be better. And in some cases, it definitely is. Some cases that won't work, but it's not inherently moral to always have different people, everyone represented in every single show. So, and they have tested this and not proven themselves on that theory. They have not proven that theory.
I've got a lot of gay female friends, and I can tell you now, not a single one of them watched The Acolyte or cared about it. And some of them are Star Wars fans, and they just didn't watch it.
Let's do a couple of
3 episodes.
And there's actually more to that answer that Kennedy provided, and I didn't realize. I'd scroll down, so there's actually more that she said. Let's do a couple of super chats. So Skyrim does the Skyrim Clips says for 249 euros. Hey guys, nice to meet you. Favorite Jedi and Sith. You want to run that down real quick, Doug?
Sure. My favorite Jedi. Well, I feel like I'm going to give such bland answers. It's got to be Luke and Darth. I mean,
I know. How could I answer other than that?
So maybe the better answer would be, what is your second favorite Jedi and second favorite Sith? My second favorite Jedi is probably maybe a tie between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano. I love Ahsoka Tano, the Clone Wars animated version. Yes. And probably Darth Maul. Darth Maul is a badass Sith. Like, he is awesome. He has stuck around, even though he was in one movie, basically.
He was great in the movie.
That was my answer. My answer, Darth Maul for Sith, and for Jedi, it's a toss-up between Ahsoka or Grogu.
Okay.
That's only because I've got a big cuddly Grogu in my bed, so I use it to help me go to sleep. So
I guess
retro.
I would pick. I would pick Obi-Wan Kenobi. I really liked him a lot, and hello there.
Hello there.
And it has like this really debonair flair.
Strike me down, I will become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
And then I would, for Sith, I would pick Sidious. He's really top tier. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Like Doug for going second. I might say Qui-Gon Jinn, even though I strongly believe that the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn should have been merged into a single character by the name of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I do like Qui-Gon Jinn. So I would say he was a cool Jedi. So I think I will take him, even though I disagree that he might have even should have been in there. He should have just been Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then with a Jedi, with the Sith, probably Darth Maul, just because of what he was built up to be and what he could have been when you're talking about the mythology, or like what your mind projects onto him after Phantom. You know, and everything that when we saw him be cool in trailers and stuff like that, like, okay, someone new.
I'll even add an extension. Who's your favorite, like, guilty pleasure, like, side Jedi? Mine was Kit Fisto. I don't know why. He was I thought he was so cool, man.
Okay.
I was like, oh, they killed Kit.
I like the one who's the same race as the green dancer lady. She's one of the ones who gets killed in Order.
What was her name? Syndulla?
Yeah, that is it. Syndulla something.
Okay. But also more substantively, for the Titter Pig Rancher comes in for $5 and says the audience, regarding the audience of Star Wars, the audience has not changed dramatically. They're trying to engineer the modern audience because the audience they're writing for doesn't exist.
Yes. I'd like to add to that. I would like to add to that because I talked about this earlier today on my channel. There was an article with that came out before the Acolyte, basically, with Kathleen Kennedy saying that she pretty much recognizes that most of the audience for Star Wars is male dominated, which is pretty much the same audience as it was in the beginning. And so, like, she knows this. So the whole issue was trying to get audiences that were not, a part of that demographic more into Star Wars with like shows like The Acolyte. And a lot of them watched the show and was really like, I can't make sense of it. And so it's like, you make something for a certain group of people, but even they have a sense of like standard where they're like, this is not good. And everyone was ready to stand by this. And if it was a great show, I think it would have been really, something that would have been like, everyone would have said like, hey, we love this. And instead of the, repulsion basically people have, and then to find out how much money was poured into it and how terrible, it looked actually pretty good. It was terribly constructed as far as like editing, dialogue,
story,
pacing, definitely story. I mean, the main thing. And it was really hard to watch, but had great ideas. I thought some of the ideas were great, and I thought that they were great if they were not for Star Wars.
I think,
you know what I mean? If it didn't have the label of Star Wars, I think, go ahead and do your weird thing.
If The Acolyte was made by all straight white males, it would be terrible. It would be just as terrible. So. Yes. It's not about those identity classes that make the story good. And I think that's why I'm always like, look, diversity is a good thing. And it's a natural thing. It's going to naturally happen a lot of times. But it can't be a guiding moral principle, because then things get confusing. Is it more important to have, XYZ cast for this role and ABC cast for that role? Or is it more important to have a good story? Those kind of things start to clash. And if you say that diversity, let's just say, is a guiding moral principle, then you have your answer. That tells you how to choose between story and a representation or something. And then you see the results, because story keeps losing the face-offs and diversity keeps winning the face-offs. And whoever's putting it together is struggling to put together a good story. So,
and I say this is a problem that spans throughout Disney. If you've watched any of the shows, there's some really horrible shows that they put out from the MCU side of Disney that was just, just makes you just wonder what is going on over there. So it feels like, and this kind of absolves Kathleen a little bit, that something just overarching is happening at Disney, where they are making sure to put in all of these the different storylines, but they're not, or messing with the story itself to make sure that they fit a certain narrative. It's very obnoxious and also surprising because it's like it's not just one show, it's like all the shows have done it.
She
And
does seem like a complete follower of this thinking, though. Like she sounds like it, she talks like it, and even that answer that Lance was commenting on, that's her basically saying, I still maintain the theory that we have to do this other thing, that we have to just change. It's almost like she's saying, here's Star Wars, here's the fan base. We need this to be Star Wars so we can get that fan base. You know what you're doing? That's not Star Wars. You want to do something other than Star Wars, but you want that logo on your movie. That's what you want. Yes. Well, so if you want a different story and a different audience, then you got to come up with a different product, and you should probably leave Lucasfilm and go make that product. Maybe it'll be good, but it's whatever you're doing that's not working here.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yes, but then when he talks about the engineering, it's possible that you could have done it. I mean, I'm open to that idea that could have happened. Like there could have been a Star Wars movie that came out, and then it would be like the Titanic phenomenon. It reaches like the Titanic audience. I remember when Titanic came out, that like high school girls went to watch that movie 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I mean, like, I mean, it connected with the demographic. It was like, okay, here, and it exploded. So I'm very open to the idea that, okay, maybe we have a new idea for Star Wars. Like I was talking about that, like my aunt who was a original Star Wars fan, watched the movie in theaters and stuff like that, but didn't even go see the last movie, like just completely left. They're like, okay, let's not even try to get her back. Kind of tragic, but okay, let's go ahead and let's not even try to get her back, because man, I have this idea that is going to make high school girls come to see this movie 5, 6, 7 times. And if they did it, I wouldn't have a problem. I was like, okay, they did, they could, but that's not what happened. Go ahead, Retro.
Well, I was gonna say, what does Titanic have that a lot of these movies and shows don't have? It has a good story. So you got to start at the basics, and they've forgotten the basic or don't want to look at the basics. Just create stuff that's just like, oh, I just want a character that's going to go in there and do this and make her, this and that, instead of like crafting characters that you like or that you want to follow and understand how to build characters into characters people like. Because that was another thing about the Acolyte, was like a lot of people didn't like the protagonists, or if they were protagonists or what. People were confused if they should even like those guys.
Well, and Titanic, for example, sticking with that example, I would say it was a good enough story. What Titanic had in common with Star Wars was the movie viewing was an experience. You are skimming at high speeds through a trench trying to knock out this Death Star. You could see the speed when they pull up and corkscrew out of there. There's a TIE fighter come, and there's lasers going by it through the windows. Like, you're experiencing this. Titanic did the same thing. 1 minute you're in this aristocratic setting with butlers and men in tuxes, serving you, caviar. And then the next minute you're on a giant piece of steel and iron in the middle of the Atlantic, and the lights go out and the water's freezing, and you're experiencing it. So, and movies can do that. They can deliver an experience. And I think that the great movies do that for you. They have to have the good story. They have to have the good character. And some of those movies can hit those high notes of delivering an experience. And for the girls, I remember hearing all the girls love DiCaprio.
Oh,
they cast a guy that brought girls to the theater, So, all good decisions. And, Titanic was the #1 film in the world until Cameron beat himself with Avatar.
Yeah. We've gotten derailed, but I kind of want to see what else she says.
Yeah, let's keep going.
We've been derailed with breaking news, everybody. We have, so we'll just see where we go. But I kind of want to see where because this was the same question, like about how, oh my God, how could you possibly live up to Marvel's or Kevin Feige's Marvel when you are so hamstrung by having to make Star Wars?
All you got is this little Star Wars franchise.
Yeah. And so she continues. I didn't realize that her answer continues. Then there you have a brand that's this expansive. You're also, and this is something we work very hard at, you try to find different entry points for different generations, because that's what Star Wars has always been. It's a generational brand, and we want to sustain that, and we work hard to sustain that, and you fail. So George gave us the gift of storytelling being across a lot of different genres, and that gives us a lot of opportunity to try things. What we've really enjoyed about the streaming space is that we've been able to experiment. It's harder to do that in the movie space. And now I think that's why it feels so good to be able to move into a Mandalorian movie, as we're coming off of 3 seasons of a very successful show. We've built an audience for that, and we gave the young audience an opportunity to enter Star Wars at a different place and not feel like you have to have seen everything. It can become their Star Wars, and that, I think, is the fun storytelling challenge.
My kids loved Mandalorian season 1 and 2. We would wake up every day it was released. I'd wake them up an hour early. We'd come down here and we'd watch the next episode of Mandalorian. They didn't care about season 3, so they lost that generation.
Well, I was about to say that, like, 3 successful series. I almost editorialized as I read. I was like, did people watch season 3? I did.
Yeah, the season 3 was just really a downgrade.
I mean, if the point here is, there's that old phrase, quantity and quality, and they tried to do with Star Wars what they did with the MCU: saturation of different products, a whole load of different stuff, trying to, a bit like Canon, throwing loads of things at the wall and hoping that something's going to stick. I mean, she says about experimenting. People make experimental films for art house film festivals. This is Star Wars, man.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not, I keep saying this. It's not that hard to get right. You know, you just got to have a main protagonist that people relate to, a sense of adventure. They need to be somebody who's got weaknesses. You know, they're probably pretty green, because the audience will relate to that, and then they're going to find their way through a series of adventures and make new friends and go up against the bad guys and yada yada yada, and then maybe some romance along the way. These are all basic things that are not that hard to get right, unless you're Kathleen Kennedy, apparently. So the generational thing, it just brings me back to the same point I made earlier, which is the story principles across whatever generation are still the same. And whilst I get what she's saying here, she's trying to answer quite cleverly, and she knows how to use her words. I'll give her that. And she's not wrong in saying about the difference between streaming and movies. But if they'd done it right, what they would have done is they would have doubled the Star Wars or tripled the Star Wars fan base, and you would have this army of people off the back of several successful Star Wars television franchises of all ages, chomping at the bit for when the new movies came out. What we've ended up with is some TV shows that are okay, and some that are not bad, several that are very so-so, some that are terrible, and some really average movies and very poor decision making. I mean, she has to, my friend said this in his video, she has to take responsibility for the folly that was the last trilogy. Why on earth would you start a trilogy of movies and not sit down and have a planning meeting and saying, these are the characters we're going to have. We've got 3 actors, some of whom might die soon. So why don't we shoot all of their scenes first and get them locked in? And then we can have all of these new characters, and these are going to be the arcs for the new characters. And then let's film these movies back to back. But this is the story, regardless of who.
We talked about that last time.
Of course.
I mean, that's a massive, massive mistake.
It is.
I could go on about it, but I won't. And
well, it's egregious.
The buck stops with her where that mistake is concerned, as far as I'm concerned, and it's the biggest mistake of all, because that's where it all went wrong from the very beginning.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at what she's saying in that, you know, it almost sounds like she doesn't acknowledge that there is any failures in any of the shows, and I think that's where. Yeah, I mean, I know she can't, but she can't. You know, it just feels very like unaware of stuff, not unself-aware. Totally, completely out of touch with the fans and what's going on.
Well, what's funny is she says we actually built an audience for that. She's talking about Mandalorian. And I would argue, and keep in mind, Mandalorian came out in 2019 after the Rise of Skywalker belly flopped in the trilogy. And no one went to go see Solo, and the Rise of Skywalker flopped. And then here comes Mandalorian on streaming. She didn't build an audience. The audience that went like Mando was the audience that felt betrayed by the trilogy and felt that Mando was a return to form.
Yeah.
I
So
think
it was the
point.
old. Yeah, it's the old audience simply coming back. You didn't build that audience.
Yeah, it was me too. I came back to watch Mando.
Right.
People came back to watch Mando because they heard about it. So okay,
Yeah,
so
I think
Deadline
she's
says,
go ahead.
so Deadline says you've got a long resume of big movies. Compared to that, how much tougher is the challenge of so much public scrutiny and second guessing by the rabid fan base?
Oh, those terrible fans.
Oh
It's-
my God.
It's not like
We're
how
rabid. We're
terrible
rabid.
is it
We're
to
rabid
be you?
dogs now.
How terrible is it to be you? Again, it's not uncommon to develop a project with big names who fall out when visions don't align, but they get reported as a big implosion. Kennedy says, what you just said, though, is so interesting to me, Mike, because that is the development. It doesn't matter if you're doing Star Wars or anything else. That's troubling. What's troubling and frustrating is that our development gets scrutinized. And I don't know any other production company where their development gets scrutinized like that. I can.
Oh.
Amazon. It's very, like with Rings of Power and stuff like that. I mean, I
Like everybody gets, if you're in the public, you get scrutinized.
Yeah. It's very hard for anything to happen within Star Wars without some aspect of it becoming public before you even want it to become public. So I guess
I think that's probably true. That
Yeah,
comment.
we can highlight that.
Yeah.
right here. Yeah,
She's
okay,
stuck in-
that's true.
she's stuck
But
in
I
the
mean,
behind.
okay, maybe it is true to an extreme with Star Wars, but something like House of the Dragon, I mean, I'm sure also has
Star Trek.
Star Trek, yeah. Probably not Star Trek so much anymore, unfortunately. But okay.
Yeah.
So but I mean does seem to be something that also helps with big IPs. So like Harry Potter in its prime, like I mean they went to a tremendous amount of trouble to try to hide Harry Potter leaks. I guess managing the message in some way is also quite a challenge because of course not every single thing we put in development we are going to make. Yes, as has been the case.
We get
That's
that.
not unusual. We want to make these things that we feel are the best. We want to make those things that as time passes feel relevant to what the audience is responding to. So there's constant discussion around that. So yeah, that's a tricky one because a lot of the scrutiny around Star Wars and the negativity has been about development. Of course, we're going to develop lots of different things with an understanding that not everything gets made. I don't feel like they put it forward like that.
Yeah, I don't know what she's talking about. She's actually, it sounds like she's making a separate excuse for why all of her announcements didn't pan out.
It does.
Yeah.
Because do other people do that? Were there a long list of like Marvel movies that were put into, like, hey, we have this in development and then never appeared?
No,
Like, I don't think that's the way things typically go.
Well, I mean,
Warner Brothers has done it a lot.
to be fair to Kennedy, it just as a general rule of principle in the film industry, there are probably, for every film that gets made, there's probably 20 that go into development that don't, just across the board. I've spent more days and hours and years in my life trying to get money for one film project or another that's being developed with this famous actor or that famous actor that never actually happens because of XYZ.
Yeah,
So-
Lance, and I know you're right. I think the difference, or the thing I'm thinking is different, is that because there's all these ideas that they're sitting around in a drawer somewhere, or, production falls through. The difference I think with her is they make these big announcements.
Yeah.
Don't those other projects kind of not get announced? It's like a pregnancy. You don't say anything until a certain number of months.
Yeah, I mean, typically, Pegasus Bridge, which was my big one, that project did get announced before we had all the money in the bank, but we had enough interest to the degree that we were confident it was going to happen, so we went public, and the interest that we got went absolutely bananas about the film, because in that genre of World War II, it's a very, very, it's a big topic. It's like D-Day. Everybody's very interested in anything to do with D-Day. So you've got a fan base there that are very similar in terms of the level of scrutiny that they'll ask about what's happening and comments and also, you know, you get haters as well, and we had all of that. So it's not uncommon to try and the guy that was on earlier said, it's not uncommon to make announcements to drum up interest, because if the press says, I'll tell you, for example, what happened with Pegasus when it went to the trades that Pegasus was happening. Literally the next day, we got a phone call from Henry Cavill's agent. Is there anything on Pegasus for Henry? He wants to know.
Ooh, wow, that's pretty awesome.
That's nice.
And that's because people start talking in the industry, and by that time we had Rupert Penry-Jones attached to the movie as well, and I think 2 or 3 other people. So word was already going around that the industry, this project's happening, and it is a chicken and egg thing. It's like you're trying to get a big name attached, you're trying to get your Tom Hardy or your Henry Cavill or whoever attached to your film, but you need to get them to read the script, or you need to get them to sign what's called an LOI, a letter of intent, meaning they have read the script, they are intending to do the movie, so your investors know they can put money in safety, and that goes in an escrow account until things get a green light and all the rest of it. It's a little bit.
So you are saying that this is more common than I'm thinking. It
is more common than you're thinking, and you need to think about the level that I was just talking about. Was my film, which was a big film for me, a £9 million movie. It would have been a life-changing paycheck. It would have paid for a house, all kinds of things. But and you're talking here on this level at billions of dollars, right? So if you think the same level of excitement, but instead of between, you know, me dealing with agents and our production company and that kind of level, you're talking about massive studio executives and people who've got hundreds of stars available on their books. CAA are going to be calling, okay, who can we get on the Star Wars project? Because it's money out the front door and in the back door. It's a business model, isn't it? You know, every time they've announced that they're developing something, if 500 million has been allocated to studio to develop Star Wars projects over the next 5 years, well, as the producer, you're going to want to try and get as big a slice of that pie as your paycheck as possible. So if you're developing 25 projects, that's 25 paychecks, whether the projects happen or not. Every time something goes into development, there's usually some development money from somewhere. Otherwise, no one's working on it. Therefore, it's not in development. The script can't be developed if no one's writing it, right? So even a pitch deck, there might not be a script, but there might be a pitch deck. Even the poster, you know, the poster for Rogue Squadron, somebody designed that somewhere. That was paid for by development money for that project, right? So someone probably has designed some concept posters. There's probably some art work, concept art for Rogue Squadrons. And I'm sure there are some stills with, you know, X-Wings and all the rest of it, all the stuff that AI is doing for them now. So that would have been paid for out of the development money to somebody to package that product.
So you're saying that announcements and the in development tag, this creates a pool of money, and then the professional anglers come in and try to get some of that money, and then if you have someone like Kathy pushing it out there, it's building momentum.
It's commonly referred to as, the tactic is your production slate. So it's always seen as very favorable that if your production company is announcing your slate of films, and Retro will know this, Canon Films did this all the time. They went to Cannes, they would announce 20 films that they were doing. They had posters, sometimes they had stars attached, and loads of those films didn't get made. Look at the Albert Poon Spider-Man film. They had the rights to that for 5 years, and they had posters done and visuals and everything, but it never got made because they went bust. But if you have a production slate, you go to Cannes with your production slate. So let's say you're Star Wars or Lucasfilm, you go to Lucasfilm with Cannes, you've got 20 posters for 20 different Star Wars Lucasfilm shows. Your investors in Cannes are going to get very excited. Star Wars is an established brand. Yes, please, we want to invest in that one. Here's some money. Great. We're going to spend some of that money on developing that show.
So is Kathy basically taking Star Wars and drumming and basically saying, I have the money, hang with me and I'll make you rich? Is that kind of her shtick?
Well, I can't speak to I would not want to speak to the mind of someone as complex as Kathleen Kennedy on any given day of the week, but
Fair enough.
any producer worth their salt who has their hands on the reins of an IP, who's in charge of producing projects for that IP, will produce a slate of projects with their name as attached as producer to all those projects. And on every one of those projects, whether that project goes to fruition or not, there will be a paycheck for them somewhere because they're the producer.
Yeah.
So you're making sure that a big chunk of the development money goes towards you. Now, I need to caveat that quickly by saying there are some producers who work very hard for that kind of paycheck. They will develop a slate of 5 films, and we're talking like the smaller level companies here, maybe like Lionsgate or somewhere like that. A producer might be in charge of producing a slate of 5 films for Lionsgate, and they may work really damn hard to get 5 really big actors attached to those 5 films, put together a budget, get the script to the best state. It is impossible. It's all the stuff you do before you get the green light. That's the development phase. And there are producers that work really hard at that. Gail Ann Hurd is one of them. I've had lots of conversations with her about projects that didn't happen for whatever reason, that she spent, the best part of a year on her life trying to get made. This is what hardworking, hands-on producers do. I think Kennedy's in this kind of weird state of fairyland where she just thinks everything will happen because it's Star Wars and she is who she is. I don't know. Your previous guest said she's very hands off.
Yeah, the report.
That makes a lot of sense to me, that she's making a lot of announcements at the top level, just like waving a wand around without really knowing whether any of these things are actually going to happen, without the scripts properly in place, without the proper development done for the projects, and then not really doing the hands-on work, the proper hours, the getting dirty in the trenches, we like to call it, to make sure those projects they go through to fruition and they're produced to some degree of high standard. I mean, she clearly wasn't on the reins of The Acolyte. That's what he says. She was barely present there. I don't know anybody I've got about 12 friends that worked on The Acolyte, some behind the production and some on camera. I think only one of them met her, from what I remember.
Yeah, the word is that she's not very involved and will come in heavy-handed late in the game. That's why she'll fire a director after 90% of the movie is filmed, and then
I'm charging in, right? And let me. So I did look up Marvel movies announced but never produced. So okay, so that's true. So this is the AI summary, but it lists things such as Eternals 2, Ant-Man 4, Captain Marvel 3, Drax and Mantis film, Rocket and Groot film. I guess I don't follow this closely enough. Mrs. Marvel season 2, She-Hulk season 2, Monica Rambeau series, Cable, Captain Britain, Doctor Doom, Inhuman, Iron Fist, Iron Man 4, and the list goes on. So I guess there were a lot of Marvel too.
Why does it feel so different with Kathy Kennedy then?
I know it certainly feels different. No, that's the truth.
Maybe the announcements were more public, because some of those Marvel films, I never remember hearing those being announced.
I remember them. And also Warner Brothers has a long list of movies that they were supposed to come out with after Justice League in 2017. And it's a huge list. None of those, a lot of them didn't get done. I wouldn't say none of them, but a lot of them didn't get done. And it's a common practice, very common.
All right. Okay. And we stand corrected, or I stand corrected there. So it feels different.
Someone's lining their pockets. Put it that way.
Yes.
But okay. All right. So there you go. They so then she develops lots of things with understanding that they are never going to get made. Deadline. I broke a piece last fall about Simon Kinberg making a deal to write and produce a Star Wars trilogy. How's that going? I didn't know anything about that. I don't know who that is. Kennedy says, we're absolutely rolling fast and furiously. This has gone exceptionally well, and he's literally going to script as we speak. We'll see something probably around June. Simon, if you remember, he did work with us years ago on the animated show, which was a really wonderful collaborative experience. And he then got very, very busy with X-Men, and then recently became available again, and he segued into this space beautifully. We're really excited about where that's headed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, but I thought no script isn't that a problem if there's no script?
Well, see,
Well,
Or
this
no,
is-
going to
Lance.
script
He's
as we
going to
speak.
script. What the phrase "going to script" means he's now going to write.
I mean, which is like a common thing that I've noticed with Star Wars and Marvel, that they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna make a movie. We have a general idea and we haven't written a script yet, or somebody's writing a script eventually. And
Well, that Ray movie they keep talking about, there's still no script.
it's
Oh.
still not coming out.
And hopefully it will stay that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully it will, because that's going to be a
No
disaster.
one wants to see that
Also, I
film.
wanted to mention also Rogue Squadron, which was another movie,
Patty
Star Wars
Jenkins.
movie that was
Yeah.
supposed to come out, and was canceled.
That was one I was actually looking forward
Me
to.
too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I-
really
Well,
thought
Rogue-
she could have done a good job.
'Cause I've got all
I
the Rogue
remember when
Squadron
Rogue One was
comics.
originally announced. Like there was the Rogue One. I thought that movie was going to be a Rogue Squadron. So I just when I heard the name Rogue One, I thought,
Yeah.
oh, we're getting a Rogue Squadron movie. And of course, it ended up being, and I did like Rogue One, but I was like, oh man, yes, there should totally be a Rogue Squadron movie.
Yeah,
I
have
think
to
it
say,
would've
I
done well.
thought it was the same.
Deadline says there are spin-offs and then there's the core Star Wars story broken into trilogies. Is that a continuation of that? Kennedy says this is the next iteration, a new saga that moves us into the future. Deadline also says, and the one by Deadpool and Wolverine director Sean Levy. Kennedy says that's that's also in the future. It's all post the first 9. Sean's is a standalone Star Wars story that will take place post 9, maybe 5 or 6 years out. And Mandalorian really stands on its own because we're dealing with a whole new era in the Star Wars and the New Republic. We have other development going on in that space as well. So that's the space that we're pretty much focused on right now at the moment, because obviously with Mandalorian, we have a pretty good sense of where that's going. And with this, it's all pretty much new characters. We may bring in some characters back from the sequel saga, but pretty much new characters. Okay, let's look at this one. Comments on that?
But from what I understand, all that she's really got moving is Grogu Mandalorian movie. All these other ones are in that, like Lance is talking about, that sort
The
of
liminal space.
quasi reality of development.
Yeah, it does sound that way. Deadline says, how many development type projects do you have percolating that you feel confident will turn into something down the line? Which is what
Good question.
Wow.
Kennedy says, to play it safe, I'd say 3 or 4 right at the moment. And a large part of it, Mike, is who is the talent we're attaching. And that's a challenge in and of itself these days because people get really busy. So you find yourself having to wait, like even too busy for Star Wars. So, right, even too busy for Star Wars Lucasfilm.
Wow.
So you find yourself having to wait with a lot of the top talent doing streaming and movies now. They're juggling schedules. And when you do Star Wars, you pretty much have to step in and not have any other competing work going on. Okay. It's a good 2 or 3 years minimum commitment. And that's tough to get top talent to be able to carve out that kind of time. So that's part of the challenge as well.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that true of everybody?
That sounds true of everybody. And I mean, it sounds like something you would not want to admit to if you're Lucasfilm and Star Wars.
Yeah, that you're not a draw. What were you going to
If
say?
they went
Lance?
into the independent film sector, they would find dozens of qualified people that have got 2 or 3 feature films under their belt that would absolutely give their right arm to direct a Star Wars film. They're probably people of that generation that love Star Wars. There's one friend of mine, Simon Cox, who made this movie called Invasion Planet Earth. You'll see me playing a tank commander in it with a huge moustache if you ever watch it.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, good God, open fire. It's all very British. But, you know, he's a massive, massive Star Wars fan. And he's also a very competent filmmaker who's made incredible films for almost no budget. You know, I think his budget on that was maybe about £100,000 or something. And yeah, and I mean, if he was given, you know, 20 million to make a Star Wars movie, he would make an incredible Star Wars movie for 20 million pounds. So I mean, the problem is that the method of who do I employ? Let's look at who's available, who's also directed Marvel films and whatever, is a really narrow field that they're looking at. They're not opening it to other talent. I'm not saying let's employ someone who's just made a short film the other day, but there are a lot of directors out there who've been beavering away for a really long time off their own back, and I'm not just speaking for myself here. I could recommend 4 off the top of my
she hasn't heard of something called a casting call. I mean,
well, and you know what, Lance, like what you're saying, you know that the guys that got together to make A New Hope were a bunch of young, hungry filmmakers who literally were like sleeping overnight in garages and building models. Like, they weren't the big, high polished, high profile guys. These were outsiders who got a little opportunity, and Lucas financed a lot of that himself, and they made Star Wars. So sometimes the hungry guys, the hungry professional is that magic sauce.
I think this is a lie burger that we are consuming right now. She's not telling the truth. That is, I find this very offensive to even say that this is a real answer that she could actually say, oh, we're just waiting for the proper talent. There's a lot of talent out there, and all you have to do is ask, and they'll come. And I don't think they're actually looking for talent. I don't think that they're actually doing the things that she's saying in this reply. Honestly,
I love it.
It's all being done in house, and if you look at the credits on The Acolyte, most of the directors on that had all worked with the girl behind it before, on one job or another. And I'm not saying you shouldn't work with the people you trust. I'm not saying you shouldn't work with the people you grew up with in the business. But the problem with it, if you do that with your entire team and you don't bring anybody different in or any fresh blood, you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of yes men.
Wait, are you saying that there's not enough diversity?
No, I'm just saying you're not. There's not people that are going to question or challenge your decisions, or maybe come up with some equally good ideas. You want people that complement or enhance your abilities, not just people that who are competent. So and Retro's right. There's a huge pool of talent out there. I mean, James Boosh, who made the Predator Dark Ages fan film, which a lot of people say is better than the last big budget Predator movie. He's a very competent filmmaker who's made 2 feature films, and he's been trying to get money for this film, one film or another. I've written 3 different scripts for him, still can't get £5 million to make a low budget horror film.
Lance, the more I'm listening to you and thinking, the more I'm like, that's what Hollywood needs. They need fresh blood coming in there. The guys who have been hustling for a while, who know what it means to have an opportunity. They need that kind of person coming into Hollywood to take the reins on, and to want the opportunity, not treat it like an experiment. Oh, we'll do a streaming service and we'll just experiment like Kennedy's talking about. Dude, don't treat it like a toy.
Like,
put your
this
skin
is
in the game.
my toy now.
Yeah, and you don't want a Rian Johnson. You want someone who grew up with and loved Star Wars, and that might be the reason that they got into making films. That's the kind of person you want.
From what I have been reading, following, is that they're specifically looking for people who aren't fans, who haven't been following Star Wars, in order to get that new audience. How's
that working out for you, Kathleen? How's that working out for you?
That's the opposite of. I've read books on branding. That's the opposite of what you're supposed to do, because the audience that's not into Star Wars, there's a reason why Star Wars has never appealed to them, because they're into something else. To keep tapping on their shoulder and be like, what about now? What about now? What if I make the TIE Fighter pink? Would you like it then? They're going to be like, dude, stay away from me. I'm not into Star Wars. And that's essentially what we got. So, there's a reason why you stay focused on the people that love your brand, and then let their enthusiasm bring new people in. That's one of the best ways. The reason my mom likes Star Wars is because I like Star Wars. My wife likes Star Wars because I like Star Wars. Because I've brought people in. I've brought people to the table because I'm totally in. And when Kathleen Kennedy says, you're the problem, I'm not bringing anyone into your theaters to watch your movies. I'm going to tell them to stay away. And they will, because they trust me. They think they know I'm a Star Wars guy. And if I said it's bad Star Wars, they're going to say, then I believe you. So, she did it the exact wrong way. She didn't grow the audience. She shrank it. Diversity of cast as the guiding principle did not make a more diverse Star Wars audience. At the end of the day, diversity is awesome, but you got to do it you have to put the important facets above it, which is good storytelling, good craftsmanship. And then the diversity, put it in everywhere you can. Just don't let that be the only guiding principle. I think that's a mistake.
They not only shrunk the audience, they divided it as well.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
And a lot of that division that they say exists predominantly only exists in their head as a way of justifying their mistakes, because there's that blame culture, that sort of toxic fandom culture, and I don't consider myself a toxic person at all. In fact, everything on my channel is I always try and make it positive or retro. I know you're very similar in that respect.
Yeah.
And
Keith as well.
I'm not interested in going online and spending 3 hours about something that I think is crap, because if I think it's crap, I don't want to waste 3 hours of my life talking about it. So, you know, I'd much rather be singing the praises about stuff. We just want good stories. We just want good quality
stories.
Well, and there's
Retro,
different
what were you
types
talking
of...
about shrinking the Retro had a comment about shrinking the audience. What were you going to say, Retro?
Oh, I think I forgot it. But if I'm going to say anything about that, the audience itself is not going to, and I think we talked about it before, is not coming on board like she thought they were by just making things like that, like the Acolyte. They're just not, and it's also kind of embarrassing if you are part of that group, because you're kind of like, okay, this is showing or making people think that having like a lead that maybe like a female is not a great thing, or it really tanks or gives it like some subpar material. And it's not true if the character's written well. Like we were talking about Wonder Woman, how well that was done, and how people absolutely love that movie. And then we have, the last three, the last three movies of the sequels, I guess you would call them, and how they weren't really loving Ray by the end. It's pretty sad. It's embarrassing too, because I feel like this is damaging diversity instead of helping it.
Yeah, because what you don't want is a backlash against diversity at all, because diversity is a good thing, and it does help. I've experienced the thrill of working with diverse, and this is also not just like racially diverse, but like I've had that too. Also diverse opinions, diverse personalities. Diversity can produce like a synergy effect where the product is way beyond you and the group itself comes together to create something new. You don't want to take that away. That is a good thing. But I've also experienced the thrill of working with people that look just like me, and the five of us team up and we did something and it came out great. So, I think you need to let people make up their own minds about how they want to put a project together.
Yes.
I think as time goes by, people are more open to a more diverse range of people. I think we're naturally becoming more tolerant and more diverse anyway. And I think that when you start to hammer that in as the message, you take away the dignity of people who are doing it on their own, doing it for real. You take that away, and someone else comes in and takes credit. It's like, I did that. And, I don't know how I'd feel. Like if I moved to China and they're like, we want more guys that look like you. You come into our show. I'd be like, man, I don't know if I want to be that guy.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
There isn't much more left of this interview. Let's take a look at it, and then we can see where to go from there. But it says, Deadline says, you've got that prequel with James Mangold, who's Oscar nominated for the Bob Dylan movie A Complete Unknown. Kennedy says, yep, he's working on this script right now. Simon's working on scripts right now. Sean, we've had been working with him already for about a year and a half. These guys are available now. Jim, he got delayed a bit because of the Dylan movie and the award season. You have to accommodate top talent to a certain extent, and quality is so important with what we're trying to do. Oh, really?
Okay.
It is.
Sure,
Okay.
Oh.
Really, it is. I like to wait for people that I think are
Never know
passionate
that.
and really good to step into Star Wars. Whoa. Deadline. Any others that I've forgotten? Well, I keep waiting for, how do you pronounce this? Taika?
Taika.
I keep waiting for
Waititi.
Taika, and he's
Oh,
working
man.
with another writer now. He's so busy. I love him. I think if we ever got to do a script from Taika, it's going to be fantastic. I already saw a first act that I loved, but tying him down is tricky.
I don't think Taika's that in demand these days. He's had some pretty high profile flops.
Deadline says, I still remember seeing, and it seems like he'd want, if it seems like Star Wars was something that he would be interested in, like that he would come to do.
He was involved in, you remember when Mandalorian season 1 came out, they had that on Disney Plus, they had a Star Wars gallery. It was a documentary. It had Jon Favreau in it, and he was talking like Carl Weathers in it and Bryce Dallas Howard. Taika Waititi was in that documentary. He was hanging around at the table talking to Favreau and Filoni and those guys. So he was involved, but that's 5 years ago now. A lot's happened.
Yeah,
Deadline said,
did you like direct one of the episodes? I think early
he
on.
did. Yes, one of the Mando episodes.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Deadline says, I still remember seeing his Thor Ragnarok, entering with low expectations, watching his exuberant vision and thinking, this is what you want to go to a movie theater on Saturday night. This is what you want this is what you want when you go to a movie theater on Saturday night.
Yeah, but notice how he's referencing the 2017 Thor Ragnarok and not the 2023 or 22 Thor Love and Thunder.
Yeah, Love and Thunder.
Kennedy says it's so true, and that's exactly the tone we're always looking for with filmmakers who can pull that off. It's not like they're a dime of dozen. You really got to find the diamond in the rough, and he's one of them. So this is the end. This is what we got to. So this is the context of that conversation. Deadline says, so even when you hand the reins to a Lucasfilm protege, it sure sounds like you're going to be in that world for 8 or 10 years. Fair? Kennedy says, I don't know if I'm going to say that, but yeah, it's possible.
She's still hedged. She's still back out of it.
And nobody wants, like, if you are now the head of Lucasfilm,
8 years,
her looking on you over your shoulder for 8 to 10 years.
Somebody is milking that paycheck.
Yeah, but she wouldn't even say yes. She should have said yes there. If she's going to die making movies, she should have been like, yeah, of course.
Yes, I'm going to be right there. I'm going to be right there. Absolutely.
Or she should have said, well, typically it's this amount, but if it need be, I can do 10 years. But
yeah, that's a great.
It sounds like she's making it sound like, oh, well, all of our projects take about 10 years.
Really, and he's like, oh, so you're saying? And she's like,
that's not accurate. She's blowing air.
Deadline says, might you also go back to working with your husband, Frank Marshall, who's doing a documentary on Barbara Streisand, another on Fleetwood Mac? Kennedy says, he's truly something. I cannot keep pace most of the time with what he's doing. And then he's just open to play on Broadway and he's finishing Jurassic. It makes me feel like I'm standing still.
You are.
You have been. You have been. Yes. Deadline says,
yo, he's busy.
Sounds like Frank's got some things going on.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like he's
follow
doing
him.
Deadline says, do you look forward to a point where the two of you can focus on collaborating on these projects that you've always cooked up together, whether it was at Amblin or elsewhere? Kennedy says, oh, sure. If something came along, the two of us, we loved coming back together and being able to work with Mangold on the indie movie. That's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. That was a real treat. Ugh.
Yeah, for you, maybe.
And to be working with Steven Spielberg, and as they say, getting the band back together, that was really fun. We had a blast. Any regrets? Okay, so this goes on. Kennedy says, no, I mean, far from regrets. I love the challenge of stepping into this space and literally space and being with Star Wars over these years, taking on the challenges of expanding on Star Wars. I've loved working with Disney, and the company's been fantastic in support of the IP. They've expanded things in ways I don't think George could have ever imagined. Well, that's probably true.
Wow, that much is true.
Yeah, and it's been so much a learning experience. I've never been an executive before. I'm a filmmaker through and through. I even approached the executive role as a filmmaker. I love working for filmmakers. That is my life's blood. It's what I enjoy more than anything. And being able to do that inside of Star Wars has been really fun because we have people who step inside Star Wars who are diehard fans, and we have people who step into Star Wars who never really knew the IP that well. And when you look at someone like Tony Gilroy, he's done transformative, exceptional work. I've been working with Tony for more than a decade. I don't think Tony would have ever imagined that we would have done that. The creative experience on Andor has been fantastic. The second season is coming out next month. That's where the satisfaction comes from, and I just hope that continues. Okay, this was longer than I thought.
Guys, I'm gonna have to duck out because it's 3:15 a.m.
Yeah, I know it's late for you, right?
I don't want to turn into a pumpkin in front of Retro.
Okay.
So.
Thank you very much for coming on, Lance.
Well,
No,
Lance,
listen,
before you go, I wanted to show you something. I got
yeah.
something in the mail today.
Oh.
Here we
What is
go.
this? Let me solo you. Let me take this down. Let me take that down.
Hey,
so what is
Retro,
it?
your
Silver Screen
your
Journeys.
name's in the back of that book.
Ooh, I'm gonna look for it.
You go to the acknowledgements section at the back. I'm pretty sure you get a special mention.
So cool.
Very cool, man.
Awesome.
If you don't, there'll be one in the next edition.
Oh, okay.
No, thank you so much for supporting me and getting that.
My
Heath,
pleasure.
I've looked you up on Facebook and I've concluded there's about 5,000 Heath Robinsons on Facebook. So.
Okay, I just I'll look for you on Facebook, but actually I just composed a tweet to you on X.
Yeah.
So I will post that. I will just post that right now so you can follow me there. We can message you there. We can get together on Facebook, wherever.
Okay.
So there we go. I just did a tweet that mentioned you on X.
Oh yes, I see you. Okay, oh great, I've got you. No problem. Follow back. All right, cool. I'll inbox you on my deets and so on. Thanks so much for having me on your channel for the first time, Douglas. Always a pleasure. Retro,
Likewise.
so good to see you. I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. We gotta chat movies soon.
We need to have a catch up.
Yes.
So I've been a bit poorly, unfortunately, but anyway, all will be well. So I'll see you guys really soon. And before I sign off, I just want to say rest in peace, Gene Hackman, the greatest actor.
Yes.
I've been so sad all today because he's the main guy that got me interested in films as a kid. He got me interested in acting. He was always the person I wanted to work with the most. I talk about him in that book several times, and he's also in the list of actors at the back that I wrote up as a kid that I wanted to work with. And I mean, I knew we were going to lose him soon because of his age, but it's all just a bit horrible the way it's happened, and but I was talking about him on my channel earlier, and I'll say this: there's probably not a single other person that exists in the film industry, either dead or living, that I can say I own that many films of theirs. I've got 33 movies of his.
Oh, wow.
And I've got those movies because he's in them. So first and foremost, and there probably isn't any other actor that I've followed so avidly or who has influenced my career choices more.
Wow.
So kind of, and I told him that. I wrote him a letter in 2005 and told him all that when he retired.
Oh wow!
So
that's great, Lance. That's amazing. And yet, Gene Hackman, one of the first people I remember in film, because I was born in '76, so Superman had come out. So one of the earliest movies I remember is Superman. And like Gene Hackman and Christopher Reeve, like to this day, when I see those guys, I'm like, oh my God, there's the two, these are the guys that like formed in my brain when I was growing up.
Yeah, that's my Lex Luthor for sure.
100%. He was the best. He was pure 70s,
yes.
collar out and everything.
It's hard to name another actor who was as versatile, charismatic, and dynamic on screen as him. Even like someone as Al Pacino, if you look at the body of work, he hasn't got the same body of work as Gene Hackman.
Yeah, so, I just watched like 3 weeks ago. I just watched Unforgiven, and I was mostly, and I hadn't seen it for a while, and I was mostly.
It's amazing.
Zeroing in on Gene Hackman. I was like, he's incredible in this role. He's so like menacing and direct and cavalier at the same time. Like he was just so good in that.
One of his best characters. Yeah. I watched Crimson Tide again earlier tonight.
Love it.
But anyway, on that note, I will sign off. But so lovely to
thank you very much, Lance. Great to meet you.
I'll see you again soon.
Great seeing you, Lance. Have a great night.
Take care. Bye. Yes. And everybody make sure that you definitely subscribe to Lance. He's got a great channel.
Yes. So we've expanded the Table Talk network right there. Yeah. So
that'd be great.
Doug, for being able to reach out to him. I guess he saw your
Okay.
tweet. You said earlier, like before we went live, you're like, hold on, I got to put this out on X. Hang on, so he
Yeah.
was one of the ones who saw it.
Yeah, I tagged him in the X tweet. I will say I'm gonna have to get running myself. Mike, I got dinner sitting out there, and
Okay.
I'm starving. So, and I'll talk to you. I have all this work done, but it's
Yeah,
okay.
we got seriously
I have a-
derailed tonight because
That's
of
okay.
the-
I have no problem.
So when
No
do we
problem.
want to try to do what we were trying to do with the retrospective? Do we want to try to get Tuesday, or do we want?
I had this weird idea. Maybe we keep getting interrupted for a reason. Maybe I just do this on my own channel. Maybe I just launch it and go into this. I put all this time and effort into it. Maybe that's how I do it. You know, I do the post-mortem on anyway, it's just something I'm thinking about. So we could talk. We'll talk. Maybe we can come up with a plan.
Okay, all right, we can do that. We did actually get to the end, basically to the end of this. I was thinking it went a bit longer than I was thinking, but we did basically get to the end of it.
Yes.
Because Deadline says, "Will you twist Tony into doing one of these Star Wars movies after he was the uncredited backstop in Rogue One?" Kennedy says, "I don't know if I can. I don't know if he ever believed he'd be decade inside Star Wars. He's writing some things on his own, and I think he'd like to get back into the director's chair. We'll see what he does, but he's just a talent, just fantastic." Deadline says he also provided the creative spine for the Bourne Identity. Kennedy says that's how we all met. And then that's when two final questions come in.
That's right.
Two final questions. Will you step outside as Lucasfilm boss this year? Kennedy, we really don't know at this stage. There's so much going on, Mike. I don't know. Deadline says when it happens, who'll make the decision? Kennedy says me. It's my decision. This is 100% my decision.
That's what she wants.
So there we go.
Yeah.
That went
Yeah.
all the way through that in all
Yeah.
the context. So there we go.
You know, here, scroll up for one. Well, it said,
Oh.
I didn't understand what she was saying about Tony Gilroy. She said, hold on, go down.
Oh, go down.
Yeah, she said, I don't know if I can. He's like, would you try to get, and it's funny because that's kind of a backhanded question. Would you ever twist Tony's arm into doing a Star Wars movie after he basically got screwed over on Rogue One? And she goes, I don't know if I can. I don't think he'd ever believe me. I don't think he'd ever believed he'd be decade inside Star Wars.
I don't know exactly what that means. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what that means either. But
he didn't think when he signed up for working with them, he didn't know he was going to be working for them for a decade now. So it's been a decade. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that was funny how he worded that. Do you think since you screwed him over, maybe he gets a movie? And then she's like, I don't think so.
Well, I just wanted to say this one thing about Kathleen Kennedy, and you know what it seems like she is going to be making films after this, or producing on films, which I think is a great idea because other than some of the stuff that is going on with Disney and Star Wars, I think she has a fantastic career. She knows, clearly knows what she's doing, as far as producing. I think if she could concentrate on like smaller productions, possibly like helping younger filmmakers come up and make those truly unique stories that she's thinking of, those socially changing stories. I think that would be really great. If it's not under the banner of something else that people were expecting, one kind of product, and now they're getting she's delivering another, that doesn't quite work. But if she is just creating something out there where people can choose that niche, then I think there could be still a nice closure for her in the field of filmmaking and for her career in general.
Retro, I totally agree. I feel like she came in. It'd be like if you came into Coca-Cola. And you're like, man, but what about all the people that like lemonade? Why aren't we making more lemonade? So you turn Coca-Cola into a lemonade stand.
You got your least favorable product, and now you want that product to be the top, the main thing. And it's like,
yeah, I mean, go open up a lemonade stand. If you care about lemonade and you want more people to drink lemonade, go open up a lemonade stand. Let Coca-Cola sell Coca-Cola because that's what they're good at. And you wanted to turn Coca-Cola into that lemonade stand, and you failed. That didn't work. So I agree with you. She did have an illustrious career prior to all of this. We were excited when she started to take over Disney or Lucasfilm. She did create the greatest, highest-grossing domestic film of all time in Force Awakens. And at the end of the day, this was a disaster. It was a mistake. There were some high points. We talked about some of those, and I wanted to go over the good and the bad in that postmortem. And we will at some point.
Wait,
but
no, we still have to do that. I'm sorry that we got we got all this.
I actually love that we kind of shot from the hip here tonight. That was fun.
Yeah, I do like when you're on and something breaking happens, and that's fine. And I feel like I've got to clip some of the material from this discussion and the previous one, and probably retitle this discussion so people know that we're talking breaking news, deadline, Kathleen Kennedy interview. We went over it.
Yeah, you should retitle it for sure.
So yeah, so I've got to do the clipping. I got some other things I got to work on in a big way and get finished. But Sunday, we'll talk about it. We'll just be in touch. We'll be in touch. So today is Thursday. Are we gonna be in tomorrow morning? I don't know.
I might stay up late tonight and sleep in. So I might come in a little late tomorrow morning, but I will be there.
Okay. Yeah, I know that Doug and I were both up late last night. Okay. So all right. So we'll be in touch with each other and we'll figure out what we're doing. Okay, but thank you to everybody who has been here with us tonight.
Yes.
It's crazy. It's been a lot of fun, though, and I did enjoy going over this. Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Retro, for coming in. So we will let everybody know if we return to regularly scheduled with the retrospective on Kennedy, which I still want to do. I have a lot that I still want to say about that. So
yeah, I'll throw it out there. I'll throw out some ideas tomorrow.
All right. So everybody will be in touch, and we'll be in touch with everybody out there on the interwebs as well. Later, everybody.
All right. Good night, everyone.